The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Welcome. We're going to be with you for the next 3 hours live, talking about how we can be more effective, more efficient working with our children on the autism spectrum. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a practitioner, we know that that is something that is close to your heart, and it is something that's very close to my heart. We have a whole host of things to talk about. Want to start the show by mentioning that we talked about last week that rapper 50 Cent, had made some very incendiary comments on his Twitter. He yesterday issued a public apology saying that he is very sorry if he hurt anyone's feelings. There are a lot of people who are still saying that there is a hope that there is more that is coming from this individual who has more than 8 million followers, and I understand that it is something that he typically does not apologize, and I hope that the apology is heartfelt and that he will do something more with those 8 million followers to correct this misconception that he did that involved all of our children and the A word, and more than that, honestly. So I think it's a great start, and I hope that there's more coming in the way of support, and maybe that, he would be somebody who would be willing to be an advocate, because there's a lot to be talked about, right? Clearly, we have a long way to go, baby, in terms of awareness. But grateful for any apology at all and any awareness lifting. Let's start a conversation, right? Okay, lots of other things to talk about here, and we do. We mainly talk about ABA, that's the truth, and there's a reason for that. ABA is Applied Behavior Analysis, is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism, and it's a huge topic, right? Because it would be lovely, it would be so nice, right, if there was just this cookie cutter thing that we could say, oh, here's the thing you need to do for your child with autism, and here are the absolute results that you're going to get, right? That ain't it, kid, right? That's just not in the realm of what's possible. And while that's disappointing, there are so many other things that are possible. And that's what we talk about here, what is possible. There is no cookie cutter, but there are a set of tools that we can use, and understanding that we can come to about behavior, that as parents, as teachers, as practitioners, we can follow those rules, use those tools, and help our individual children in myriads of different ways to make progress. All of our kids will make progress if we use these tools properly and adapt them for their individual circumstances and needs. When we do that, again, progress that will be had. Is all the progress going to be the same, and can we expect it to come in the same amount of time? No. That's not a reality. But what is a reality is that they will all make progress. It is something that we have to give our time and our energy to. So we're here to talk about those tools, how we get through this journey. And by the way, while you're doing ABA, because it is so intensive, we know that the proper prescription is between 25 and 40 hours of ABA intensive therapy. And even after those 40 hours, that we're upholding what was learned in those 40 hours the rest of the hours, right? So it's exhaustive, mentally, emotionally, physically, and certainly financially. So we talk about all of those different things here and try to build your tool chest to include ways of coping with your stress, with your financial burden. And get you in a place where you are ready for this marathon that will ultimately help your child to reach their fullest potential. That's what it's all about. Now, I will tell you that despite the fact that we're going to talk about ABA a lot, I am not an ABA expert. I am not a board-certified behavior analyst. I'm not a psychologist. Wasn't even a psychology major in college. But I'm a parent, and I'm a former teacher, and I know good teachers who want to be effective in the classroom with our kids. And there are many more that I haven't met, but I know that they are out there. I know that many of you have not met those people yet, but I want to hook you up with those people, and I want to help teachers who don't have the tool chest to have the tool chest. And most importantly, I want to help you as a parent to be able to negotiate these muddy, muddy waters, right? When my son was diagnosed, he was 2.5, and he had regressed into autism and was essentially nonverbal at that point. He is now 9 years old, will go into completely included 4th grade in the fall, is performing at or above grade level in all of his subjects, and he is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but talk to his mother, and I'll tell you, he's pretty darn close. He, by the way, when we look at the studies that have been done over 20 years, for ABA, there's usually 3 categories of progress, right? There's the kids who progress so much that they no longer qualify for a diagnosis of autism. They literally don't qualify for it and lose their diagnosis. That's around 47% of the kids who get the proper amount. That's a pretty high number when you stop and think about it. Then there is, so what happens to the other 53%, right? There's another group of kids in the middle who don't lose their diagnosis, but that make such tremendous progress that they function quite well in their lives with just a little extra support and have wonderful, meaningful lives and go on to have great jobs, and they're still making progress, right? Then there's a third category of kids that don't make the tremendous progress. They're going to need support the rest of their lives, but they meet huge adaptive goals like toileting and those kinds of things, being able to feed themselves. And they all, if they've had the right amount of ABA therapy, meet functional communication skills. So they are able to communicate their needs to other individuals, which is still a pretty huge area. And I would also remind you that the kids who are in that area of progress typically are kids who are twice exceptional. They have another diagnosis besides autism, and still they make a tremendous amount of progress. So if you're sitting there and thinking, well, my child doesn't just have autism, my child has autism and they have apraxia, my child has autism, they have Down syndrome, they're still going to make a tremendous amount of progress. And my son, by the way, is in that middle category. He has not lost his diagnosis, but I expect that he will at some point in his life. And until he does, he is getting a little bit of support and is doing brilliantly. And as a mom, I get to sit and have substantive conversations with him when I never thought I would. I never thought I would hear my child say, "I love you, Mama," but I do. I also hear, "Mom, I'm really, really mad at you right now." And "Mom, I'm not speaking to you right now. I need a moment." Right? I hear all of that. Or, "Mom, why is that person acting that way? That's not polite." Right? These are the kinds of conversations that I have with my child. Now we're into politics. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing. So that's why I'm here. We got help along the way. Parents and parents who pointed us to experts, experts who pointed us to help, people who reached out their hand and said, "I see what you're trying to do and I want to help you do it." And the main parent who made sure that we knew about ABA therapy and that I saw her child and the progress that he was making, and she said, "You know what? You are the luckiest person on the face of the earth because you live within a certain distance of the headquarters of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. That's where you're going to go and you're going to get the help that you need." And that is exactly what happened. And about a year later, when my child was speaking and we could see that there was a real turnaround, I said to that mom, "What am I ever going to do? How am I ever going to repay this? This is the biggest debt that and believe me, I have some debts from all of this, but this is the biggest debt that I'm ever going to have." I've unplugged myself. Hold on. I'm just a mess today. But I said to her, how am I ever going to repay you? And she said, well, you're just going to pay it forward. So I want you to know that's why I'm here, to pay it forward. I have been in your shoes in some form, not completely, right? It's different for all of us. And I don't want to pretend that I know what you're going through, because it is different for all of us. Our kids are different. Our circumstances are different. Where we live is different. The rules, unfortunately, are different wherever we live in the world. But I want you to know that at a core, the emotion, the fear, the feeling that I wasn't up to this, I have been in those shoes. And I got to tell you, if I can do this, then you can do this. And I want to hold your hand through it. I want you to come and tell us where it's fallen apart on you and be honest about it. Tell us what kind of support you need. That's what I'm here to do, is to help you get the answers or even the questions that you need. And by the way, if you're somebody who's a little bit further down the road and you have figured something out, write to us too. Share your experience and your strength and your hope, because there's somebody else right now, someplace in the world, who could sure use it, right? So how can you participate? It's a good question. Let's talk about that. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com, then you see before you, it either says live or rebroadcast, right? If it says live, there's a box there that says your questions. It's active. You can just type in there. You don't have to log on. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to sign in. No, it's free. Nobody's asking for your credit card or your personal information. You just type and you hit enter, and it shows up magically right here on my screen. And I can answer your questions and we can have a conversation back and forth. Even if you just want to test it out and say, hi, I'm in Mozambique, or hi, I'm having a bad day. You know, whatever it is, we're not judging here, right? So feel free to participate in that way. If you're watching and it says rebroadcast, I want to let you know that that feature is going to be active Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to noon. But if it says rebroadcast, there's lots of ways you can still participate. And by the way, this goes for all the other different... It's Monday. All the other ways that you can be watching us and all the other days when we're not live. So let's talk about what some of the ways are that you can get a hold of us. You can email us. Matt's going to start to show them on the screen to you. There's the email address. Email to us anytime, day or night. We will cover your question, suggestion, answer, comment, whatever it is, on the next available live show. And we'll also send you a typewritten response. So that's a great way to be in touch with us. You can also phone into the show. During the live show, you can be patched directly into the show. We're going to have a guest via Skype later on. And you can, if you want to ask him questions, you can call into the show. Feel free to do that. If it is after hours, when we're not live, they're Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, somebody is here to answer the phone. But if it's after that, you can leave a message and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. So phone in. I mentioned Skype. We are going to be Skyping later on today with a guest. We're going to be with Captain Gene Saunders, from Project Lifesaver International. He's going to be Skyping in with us, but you can Skype in with us as well. If you have something that you want to talk about, or if you want to ask questions about what we're talking about, or ask our guest a question, and you can just Skype in audio only, or we can Skype in a picture. So keep in mind that you can Skype away with us. You can also participate on our Facebook page, our new Autism Live Facebook page, and we encourage you to like it while you're there. You will find the question of the day there and other topics. We post video from recent shows. I know that we're featuring, we had Misty Mack a week and a half ago in, and she's an insurance contracts specialist, and she was talking about affordable health care and what the act that the Supreme Court upheld, what it's going to mean for those of us who have children on the autism spectrum. She was also talking about what insurance reform in California is going to look like, because we have that on board now. We're going to be talking a lot more about that. In fact, a little bit later, I'm going to be sharing information about how you can participate, if you're in the state of California, in workshops that are going to be happening around the state all the month of July, and I think some of them in August. So we'll remember to give you more information about that later on. But in any case, participate with us on Facebook. We really enjoy that. You can also tweet away with us We talked about 50 Cent and his tweets. Let's bombard the world with our tweets about how great our kids are. You can write in question of the day, anything that you would like to share on Twitter. I also mentioned that there are other ways you could be watching the show. You can be watching us on autism-live.com, and we do webcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week there. So once we finish one show, it just will replay other shows. But if you're looking for a specific show, like you say, oh, I missed that interview with Misty Mackey, and I want to watch the whole thing uninterrupted. Well, there are several places that you can go to see that. You can go to blip.tv.com, or not .com, blip.tv. Can you tell that it's Monday here? I'm borrowing this brain. Usually it's just the lips I'm borrowing, but it's the brain today. So you can go to blip.tv. We have a whole channel there, and you can search topics. If you just type in Misty Mackey, or you can type in insurance, and you should be able to find everything that you need. But if you go, oh, I just really want to watch last Thursday's episode. I want to watch, because I know that Shannon, I don't even remember who we had on Thursday. I know who we had on. I know exactly who we had on. We had Angela Persicki, and she was talking about toileting, and you go, I want to see that whole show. You can do that as well. Just put the date in, and you can find the entire show, or you can find just the segment, and you can pause and fast forward and rewind and watch it at your leisure, which is a really wonderful thing. By the way, you can also do that on our YouTube channel. We have full episodes there and those partitioned out. So if it's easier for you to get YouTube where you are, you can certainly do that. We are also available as a free download on iTunes, no cost. It's not even going to cost you a penny. You can go in and download the individual shows, the entire show there, and store them on your iTunes account if you would like to do that. And we are also available on Ustream. So that's a lot of different places you can watch us, all of them for free at any time during the day or the night. And if there is a place that you would like to see us that would be really convenient for you, would you do me a favor and send us an email? Tell us where you would like to see us, because that's what we want to do, is be where you are so that you can get the information that you need when you need it, okay? That's our little dealy-wheely with you. I hope that you will participate in the conversation. Hey, speaking of which, we like to start every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day where we take on one word, one phrase, one crazy anagram at a time, right? Trying to figure out what in the hey nani are these people talking about. These BCBAs, these psychologists, these language pathologists, all these people, and they have these lovely jargon terms, and they don't give you a dictionary to come with them, right? Well, and even if they did give you a dictionary, who's got time to read it and understand it? And half the time, the definition in the dictionary, you'd need to go look up 18 words just so that you could understand it. So we give you the terms here, one little increment at a time so that it's not overwhelming. We'll go over what the actual definition is, and then we'll clarify in a very working definition that isn't as exact. I know it gives our BCBAs hives when we do the working definition, but you got to start somewhere, right? I would say I want it in plain English. Talk to me like I don't have a degree in psychology. So that's what we do here. All right, our term for today is SD. You see this big S, little d, and you'll see this from time to time in ABA. You should see it all the time in ABA. And it's a very confusing thing to me. It actually stands for discriminative stimulus. My thing always is, then why isn't the D big and the S little? If it's discriminative stimulus, isn't it backwards? I don't understand why the S is big and the D is little. And you know what? I've given up caring, because that's not the important part here. Okay, the actual definition is a circumstance or action that precedes reinforcement. All right, that's not the worst definition, right? But I still go, what does that have to do with my individual child? Okay, so our working definition is what you say or do to get the child to do the intended response. What we'll see when we're going to do DTT, which is discrete trial teaching, is that we're going to try to create pretty much a sterile environment in which we are going to teach one little thing. We're not trying to teach 38 things at the same time, right? What's great about natural environment training, NET, is that we're teaching multiple things at the same time, and it's all this really wonderful organic stuff. But the difficulty is a lot of times to gain a new skill, it's too much for our children. Sometimes they have sensory issues, or they're not clear about what you're doing, what you're pairing with what, right? And we want to be crystal clear in order to gain a new skill. So when we're going to use NET, natural environment training, but we're also going to use DTT, discrete trial teaching. And think of creating a bubble in which you're only going to teach one tiny, tiny, tiny little thing. Let's imagine that we're going to be teaching brushing teeth, right? So while we're brushing teeth, we're only going to teach brushing teeth, and beyond that, we're going to make it even smaller. Because think about all the different things involved in teaching how to brush teeth. You know, there's taking the toothbrush, having it in your hand, taking the top off of the toothpaste, squeezing to get the toothpaste on the brush, you know, wetting it, then scrubbing the teeth, and how there's different positions that you have to scrub, spitting, rinsing, right? Gargling, if that's a part of what you do, cleaning out the toothbrush, turning off the water, and putting everything away, and mopping up. It's a lot. And for some of our kids, it's just too overwhelming. But imagine if you were just going to teach turning on the water. That, you know, that's all it is that you're going to teach. So we want to encapsulate this moment. So what is the thing that we would say or do to get the child to turn on the water? Because the behavior is the turning on the water, right? And we want to reinforce that. So we've set up a circumstance in which we're going to say or do something, they turn on the water, and then we're going to reinforce. And that's how we're going to teach them to just turn on the water. Later on, we're going to teach them how to squeeze the toothpaste, how to brush, you know, all those individual things, and we're going to stick them all together. But we want this SD, this discriminative stimulus, whatever the thing is, to be very precise, very, very precise. Now, there are a million different ways that we could approach this, right? This is one of these tools. So what's best for this individual child? For this child who maybe they have beautiful receptive language skills, so they hear things just fine and understand it. They just can't maybe speak, but they hear things fine. So for that child, we might say, turn the water on, right? And the child, and we guide them through it the first time, and they turn the water, and we go, good job, and we give them tickles or bubbles or, you know, something that they find reinforcing, access to a toy, whatever it is. So we're showing them, when I say this, the SD, you do this, the behavior, the targeted behavior, and then you get a reward. But let's imagine that we have a child who, for whatever reason, has real difficulty with receptive language, and we're working on that with other lessons, but we want to teach turn on the water, and they don't have receptive language skills. So we have a picture, whether it's a cartoon or an actual photograph of the child with their hand on the handle to turn on the water, and we show them and we say, do this, right? So we're pairing some receptive, but we're really showing a picture. This is our SD, the picture. It's what we say, do, or show, ultimately, that causes the behavior to happen, and then they get the reinforcement. You know, different things, it could be a sound, it can be a picture, it could be a gesture, it could be text. For some people and for some kids, they're hyperlexic, and so seeing the text turn on the water is a great SD. So it is the thing that we do or say in order to get the response that we want, which we are then going to reinforce. The key here is that if we set it up correctly, that anybody could come in and do it. The SD could be anything, the child's going to turn on the water, and we're going to reinforce it. And in this way, we're going to be 100% clear that we are teaching that skill. Remember, we've talked about before that imagine you're in Russia and you are trying to learn the language there, right? And you have no idea, and the person stands there and says a whole bunch of Russian to you, and you have no idea what it is. But if somebody is crystal clear and they point to the table and mime's sitting down and lifting up the spoon, right, to show you the action that they want you to do, and they say the word, the one word that stands for eat, you're going to acquire that language that much faster. Well, all the skills that we want to teach our children, we want them to acquire acquire in a really efficient way, right? To not be confused. So that SD, it's going to be very succinct, to the point. The child's going to be able to do the behavior. We're going to reinforce it. The child goes, oh, I want to do that more often. There's much more to it, right? Because we got to make this skill their own eventually, and we got to open it up to lots of different kinds of SDs so that the child is able to apply the circumstance no matter what somebody says. But in the beginning, we got to be 100% clear to acquire the skill. That's where the SD, it's what you say or do in order to get the child to do the individual behavior. If it's still not clear, don't panic. Because this is the kind of thing that if you see it again and again and again, and I'm going to show you at the top of the hour, we'll watch the A word, and afterwards we'll talk about what some of the different SDs were that Jessica gives the child. Jack Riley, who's getting therapy, we'll talk about it, and you'll get closer to it. And then when it happens with your child, you'll see exactly what it is. So be patient with yourself. These terms, I will tell you that my child had ABA therapy for quite a while before I would just avoid when they would say SD. I would go, I don't want to know what that is. Just, it's the thing, right? It's what you say. Okay. But I more and more get it as time goes on. All right. We also always have a question of the day for you. Question of the day meant to get you thinking and participating with us. Really love it when you guys participate on Facebook. I know I'm going to be looking later on to hear your answer to today's question. So you can write into Facebook right now on our Autism Live page. So our question today is, when you get a break, what is your favorite thing to do? And I know I could just hear you guys go, what break? When do I get a break? I don't ever get a break. Well, that's one of the things we got to talk about today, because you got to have a break. And it's going to take, yes, listen to what I'm going to say, it's going to take more work to get the break, right? You're going to have to do a bunch to be able to get the break. But you know what? If you are willing to, for a brief period of time, do more work, you will set yourself up for more success, because you need a break, right? And there are different ways to get a break, and we'll talk about what some of those different things are, but you need a break. We talked the other day about how even if it is just when you get into your car with your child to go to OT, that you plan to get in a little bit early so that there is 1 minute, once your child is strapped into the 5-point harness, when you sit in the car and you take 1 minute and breathe, right? And you work up from there. But eventually you are going to get a break again in your life. I know it seems like you won't maybe at this point, but you will get a break again. And what do you love to do? I used to scrapbook. I don't anymore. I don't know why. I love to scrapbook, and I need to start doing it again. But I think it's the digital age. I'm starting to want to do it digitally, and I just haven't made the time and the space for that. But when my son was in the first 2 years of therapy, that was something that my husband we found time for me to go do, to scrapbook. It was social. I got to meet with other moms and sit, maybe one night every 2 months that I would go on a Friday night after my child had gone to bed, and sit and stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning with a bunch of women scrapbooking. And what was lovely about that was that I got to come home, and the next day my son would get up and I would show him what I had scrapbooked, and I would scrapbook all kinds of things that were him, right? And he still to this day loves to look at those pages. They're very poignant for me because it was a very difficult time, but I'm so grateful that I did it. It was time away, but it had a purpose that was beyond just me getting rest, because at the time I really couldn't justify me just getting rest and being away from my child. But man, that is important for all of us. You need a break. And if it's that you got to ask somebody else, you need a break. But what would you do? I have a friend who made so much fun of me because I chose scrapbooking. She said, as much stress as you are under, as under-rested as you are, that you want to scrapbook is just so disappointing to me. And she said, if I ever say to somebody, I finally got a break, I'm going to go scrapbook for an hour, she said, I want you to kill me. Because that will mean that I have had a psychotic break. But it's different things for different people, right? And that's the whole thing about what's reinforcing to you is going to be different. Now I'm learning how to to play the guitar. So that's what I do if I get a break is I have my little guitar book and I have my CD, because the truth is I can't just get to lessons. It's not going to work that way for me right now. And but I got this thing called a Chord Buddy, and I'm learning how to play the guitar, and it's very nice for me, and I can go and spend 10 minutes and it's a nice little break for me. Okay, but what do you do? What do you do? We want to know, because maybe it's something that somebody else hasn't thought about that would be really good for them. So share away, and let's work on getting you more time for a bigger break. That'd be lovely, right? Okay, we always have a topic of the day. It kind of becomes the topic of the week, and you might have guessed already. Our topic this week is, can we just like all sigh for a second, managing the stress, because it's a reality. It's an absolute reality, and we can run from it. It's still going to catch us. And what we can do for it, again, it's going to be different for different people, but we have to have a plan, right? We can't just imagine that's something I'm going to take care of next week or next month or next year or next life, right? We gotta have a plan for managing the stress. And you know, I hope that you're working with a team. I know that, you know, it's a 50-50 proposition whether you're in a relationship, parenting, or not. It would be my wish for all of you that you would be in a positive relationship, parenting, but I know that that's not the case for all of you. But even if you are in that ideal situation that you're in a great relationship, parenting together, you're both going to have to manage stress, and it might be in different directions, right? That what one needs, the other one needs something else. And when you're alone managing the stress, extra hard, and we really are going to talk about how you got to find some people to lean into. That one of the things we have to get comfortable with is asking for help and support. Not going to the hardware store looking for spaghetti, right? Looking for support from people who clearly can't give it, but really assessing the situation and saying, okay, who can I count on, and what can I count on them for? If you've got one friend that you can count on for 15 minutes every 4 months, well, you know what? That's 15 minutes every 4 months. And there's no point asking them for an hour every other week, but 15 minutes every 4 months. And if you got enough of those strung together, you could take a break, right? Something to think about. All right, so we're going to talk about managing stress today, and we've got quite a lot to talk about. That really the whole thing is looking at how we manage stress and how we set ourselves up for success, because ultimately, I think it's important to manage the stress, but if you see that what you're doing is working and successful and your child is doing well, I think that while that's not going to make the stress go away, it helps you to be able to continue on and helps you to find the strength to manage the stress. You know what I mean? I do remember very early on, saying I'm overwhelmed so many times that I remember sitting there going, what does that word mean? And I went to my old book dictionary and looked up overwhelmed. Because I thought, well, overwhelmed, what does whelmed mean, right? Overwhelmed. And what I discovered was that it means to be underwater. And I think the thing is that so much of this journey, especially in the first couple of years, it's that fear of I'm sinking, I'm going down, and I can't catch my breath. It's like the water is right here and you're trying to, that's what autism felt like for me. And I think it's really important that we all recognize that there are so many things that contribute to that, right? And you can't manage them all, but if you take little things on at a time, you can get a better toehold. So having success at school, how we set ourselves up this summer for success for school, not to increase our stress, right? But to know that when they go to school in the fall that they're better prepared. That will decrease our stress. Giving you a language tip today that will hopefully help you to help your children to language how they're feeling, which will reduce their stress. And in turn, it will reduce your stress. And we have a very special guest today. I mentioned this earlier. Captain Jean Saunders is going to be with us during the last hour No, I lied. He's coming at 10:20, I believe. We're starting to talk to him. And I don't know. I got to look at the schedule. But in any case, he is from Project Lifesaver International. And this is a really unique organization that helps with well, it actually helps with adults and children who wander and are at risk for flight. I know it's a subject that's really painful to talk about. But you know what? It's more painful to think that it could happen and to be in constant fear that it could happen. So there are a lot of different things this week that we're going to take on that while initially it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that because it's stressful. If we talk about it and handle it, that is when we will manage the stress. I know it, please, I am queen of sticking my head in the sand, right? But that is not managing stress. That just ratchets the stress back up. So if we face it, talk about it, and say, what am I doing about it? That's when you manage the stress, being proactive. So that's one of the things that we're taking on today, talking about elopement with our kids and how we can really be effective in preventing it. You know, there are lots of things that we can do, but while our children are learning not to elope, we got to make sure that they're safe or we're not going to sleep, right? So Captain Saunders is going to be talking with us about that. I'm going to check the schedule and find out exactly when he's going to be with us, and I'll let you know at the top of the next segment where we will be talking about our stress tip for the week. So stick with us.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. I was an institution, a hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, you know, make simple desire requests, I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
My name is Deli Popola, and I'm one of the creators of thehotspot.com. Thehotspot.com is an online support system for families and specialists who are affected by autism across the whole world. Share inspirational stories, find resources in their area. Hope you can join.
Excuse me. That was quite the inhale. Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. I did not just swallow a bug, but I don't know what I inhaled. Too much air, I guess. But in any case, it is time for our stress tip of the week. This is something that we try to talk about every Monday and our whole topic this entire week is managing the stress. We know the stress is just a part of this journey, and we have to learn how to manage it. Well, you know, when you talk to people about how do you actually manage stress, there are a couple of things that they bring up and say these are the key factors towards people actually managing stress. And what's amazing to me is that they're all free. So you would think that it would be a whole lot of medication and a whole lot of time on people's couches, and I know that those things work for some people, but when you got a kid on the spectrum, it isn't always conducive towards you getting that kind of help. So the 4 big things that they talk about for managing stress, if you're not in a situation where it's already, the thing has already gone off the rails, the 4 big things: laughter. Because they say laughter is the best medicine. Finding a way to laugh on a regular basis. Whatever that is for you. If that means, renting movies that are hilariously funny, do it as inexpensively as you can. If it means watching things that are just ridiculous after your child has gone to bed. I have shared this before on the show that we were big fans of Conan, and when literally the night that my son got the diagnosis, I had to be someplace and be at a show, a live show, and my husband couldn't be with me because we didn't have a babysitter. And so I went and I came home, and we'd had this devastating news and we really needed to process it. But what we did was we sat down and watched a marathon of Triumph the Insult Dog. And I gotta tell you, we laughed until we wept, because sometimes that's what you gotta do to release all of it. And you might think to yourself, oh, Triumph the Insult Dog. Yes, Triumph the Insult Dog. We laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And sometimes you just got to do that. You can't be in serious land. And that's, we do love to watch Conan, my husband and I, because we're always guaranteed a laugh when we're watching his show. And my husband likes to laugh. And there's nothing that's more relaxing to me than watching my husband laugh. And I think he would say the same thing. It got us through a lot. We did 5 years of intensive ABA therapy, and, we were incredibly lucky. Please know that I know how lucky we were that the state of California footed the bill for that. But it still meant that I had to leave my job and be at home. So it still was financially devastating, right? Unimaginably financially devastating. And we found a way to make it work and to laugh whenever we could, because it does reduce the stress. So find the way to laugh, whatever it is. And if you can find a way to laugh with your significant other, so much the better, right? Watch whatever you have to watch. Don't try to invent it organically, although it will come that way sometimes, but you can't count on that, right? So laughter, one of the big things that you can do. We talked about this last week, the importance of breathing and meditation, right? Really, really important that you've got to find a way to have some big, deep breaths, and that meditating and finding some white space, really, really important towards managing stress. I mean, they've documented it scientifically. Really important. Okay, the third thing, which, is the one that I struggle with all the time, although I know it helps so much, but exercising, moving your body in a big way, sweating, getting everything moving and flowing, it increases the breath, it makes you more relaxed, you're going to sleep better. So I feel like a criminal saying it to you, because I'm not good at accessing this one, but work in progress. And it does help with stress, even if it's just walking around the block, getting out of your head, walking around the block. And I know for some of us, it's like that is insurmountable. When we started with autism, I couldn't walk around the block. I couldn't strap him into the stroller. It wouldn't hold him. He'd upturn the stroller and he couldn't walk holding my hand. So, but finding some way to exercise. What we did do in the early days is that we lived in a condo that had a swimming pool, and my son loved the water. And so we would take him swimming on a daily basis. It was good exercise for him, and it was at least a little bit of exercise for me. So exercise, a really big one. Okay, so those are 3 of the 4. So what's the big 4th one, which I think encompasses all the different areas: breathing, meditation, exercise, and laughter? Yes, having sex. It's true. That's one of the big things that reduces stress. Do it responsibly, right? So that nobody is, being hurt in any way. But it can be something that helps to manage the stress. And at the end of the day, it also, if you're if you're having sex with your partner, hopefully will help to strengthen the relationship, because as somebody told me many, many years ago, the best gift that you can give your child is having a loving relationship with your significant other. That out of everything else in the world that you can give them, that's the best gift. And let's face it, on this journey, because there's so much to stress going on, and everybody's desperately trying to find what's reinforcing for them, it's really easy to get disconnected, super duper easy to get disconnected on this journey. And you got to connect in all the different ways that you can, in any way that you can. So, the prescription for this week is to connect with your spouse on all those different levels. Take them to bed, have a laugh, get some exercise, and make sure you do some deep breathing. And that is how we're going to manage stress this week. I make it sound like it's all this incredibly easy thing to do, but talk about it if you have a significant other. If you don't, I'm going to wish that you get a significant other that comes into your life, that you have these things to share, and until you do, that you find the way to manage these things on your own. And be kind to yourself the whole time that you're doing it. This is one of the hardest things that you're going to do in your life. But I want you to know that there will come, if you do it and do it right, there will come a day when it gets much, much easier. I'm not saying that it's going to go away forever, but it gets easier. One by one, as you tick off these different behaviors that your child is doing that are leading to things being disruptive, and the financial cost and the stress and all these things, one by one as you manage them, it does get more manageable. And life changes, life goes on. So breathe, get some exercise, have some sex, and laugh while you're doing it. Okay? We're going to take a break and come back and talk about success at school. Stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age, which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. You know, we're going to talk about a success at school tip, something that we can be doing over the summer to help our kids get ready for the upcoming school year. But we have a question of the day, and we're going to be reading more of your responses later on during the day. But I wanted to share one because we just talked about our stress tip for the week. And somebody wrote in on the Autism-Live forum, that box, the Your Question box, if it says live, that you can just type in. And I want to thank you for doing that. And I think it goes hand in hand with both the question of the day and how to manage stress. I love this. It says, I am in a book club that meets once a month. I read the book at night. My husband watches the kids on Saturday night that the book club meets. It's nice because I have the book to talk about since most of my day revolves around autism. It's a wonderful thing because it's an ongoing thing. So every night you find a little bit of time that you're reading, and then you get to go and meet with your group and discuss the book and have, again, something else to talk about it, right? Because for a while it feels like, oh, we've gone to autism land and that's all we can talk about, right? I remember saying many times how boring I was because people would ask me how I was, and instead of responding with how I was, I would talk about how my son was doing. And of course, you know, even now, I talk about autism a little bit here, and so when people talk to me, I find myself saying, you know, I'd like to talk about something other than autism for a few minutes and have other things to talk about. It's not the easiest thing, but what a wonderful way to do that, to be talking about a book. Fabulous. Love that suggestion. And love that you're doing that for yourself, and love that your husband is being supportive of it. That's a wonderful thing. I'm sure it wasn't easy to set it up and to make the time for it, but wonderful that you did. It's a great example. Okay. Something that maybe the rest of you might want to think about if you're into books. Very great way to spend time. All right, so it's time for our success at school tip for the week. This is something that we talk about every Monday, how we can set ourselves up for success during the school year. And here we are, it's summer for most of us. Our kids are off from school. And what can we do during this period of time that is the most productive thing that we can do to set the child up for success? Some of the things that we've talked about is getting the child used to a routine for whatever the new routine is. If it's that every 20 minutes the class changes subjects, then getting your child on a 20-minute schedule that every 20 minutes you change things at home, right? Covering some of the different subjects that are going to be covered, especially when it's a memory thing, spending the entire summer to do it so that when you get to the fall that your child is already that much ahead. Last summer was our summer of the multiplication tables, right? This summer we're doing the state capitals. I don't even know that that's the standard for 4th grade, but I know I think it's earlier than that, and we just never got around to it. And it's something that I want my child to have. I know it's going to set him up for success down the road. He won't have to memorize it in a very quick amount of time, because it takes my child, depending on what it is, it takes my child a while to memorize. So when it's facts like that are just, they're not interchangeable, they're just facts, for some reason that is harder for him to memorize. He's very good at memorizing. He'll be a great actor someday because he's very good at memorizing. 12 lines of dialogue can do that very quickly. But if it's just, the state capital of New Jersey, it's taken some time, right? Because to him it's boring and uninteresting. I got to put a story and a whole concept with it, and then he's got it, which takes a little bit of time. So how do you get your child ready? Well, one of the things that I encourage you to do is to go online and look up. I think that by this point, all 50 states in the United States have their state curriculum guidelines online. If your state doesn't for some reason, then look at a state that is neighboring to your state, that's in the same area, because they do have differences. You will see that different times for the social studies, they'll do states. So if you're, in some state and you're having to look up the state next to you and they're saying that they're going to do their own personal state, you would change it to your state history. But you will see that there are specific standards for each grade, that in order for the child to successfully finish that grade, they have to have met those standards. And you'll see that they're in a wide variety. There'll be the language arts standards, the math standards, there'll be social studies standards, there'll be art standards, performance standards, a whole host of different things that will be there. And you can go through and kind of read through them. They're kind of on the dry, boring side, right? But you get a feel for what a child in this grade needs to learn, and you know what you need to focus on. I mentioned before that having an opportunity either before the school year ends, I can't even talk today. Before the school year ends, talking to the lead teacher or the teacher that your child's going to have and saying, what are the big standards? What are the big things that a child learns in this grade? And going home and starting to focus on those things. There are exceptions to that rule. And usually if you meet with a lead teacher, they'll tell you, here's what we don't want you to work on. For instance, in third grade, they were going to start cursive writing. And the lead teacher specifically said, do us a favor, do not work on this with him. We're going to do it in a very specific way, and we don't want kids to be confused. We're going to go really slowly. They'll be fine, but don't work on it with him over the summer. And when they ask you not to work on something, do a gut check and see whether you trust the people to be able to handle it in the way that they're asking to. And if you do, then comply. And if you don't, well, what are they going to know? I always thought, my son is named after, his name is Jem, and he's named after the little boy in To Kill a Mockingbird. And of course, there's a wonderful book and a wonderful movie, and there's a wonderful scene in the movie where the little girl has gotten into fights at school. And the dad is sitting there with her on the porch swing and says to her, Scout, why do you always get into fight? And she says, well, I hate that old stupid teacher anyway. And he says, well, why? And she points out something that the teacher said because she didn't realize that a child was poor. And then she says, and you know what else she says, Atticus? She says, you're teaching me how to read all wrong, and that you shouldn't be reading with me anymore. And they sit on the swing, and he says to her, he says, well, Scout, I'll tell you what, if you'll agree not to fight anymore, then you and I will keep reading no matter what, and we just won't tell the teacher. And she says it's a deal. And so there's no more fighting. It's a beautiful ABA moment there, because it's a parent saying, here's what's more important to me, because he's been reading with her all along. And he says, we're just not going to tell the teacher, but this is your reinforcement for not engaging in fighting, right? Beautiful movie from the 1960s, a lovely little ABA moment there with a child who's engaging in challenging behaviors. So if a teacher asks you to do something or not do something and your gut check says, no, I don't think so, You have that discretion. But a lot of times there's a reason why we did not start cursive reading or cursive writing at home last summer, because we were asked not to, and I totally trusted our teachers, and it was a good thing, and he did really well with it throughout the year. But you can go online, as I was saying, and look up what the state standards are and give yourself a leg up. Now, if your child is at grade level, that's a really good thing to do. If they aren't at grade level, I want to remind you that the skills program has an academic curriculum that catches a child up to the end of first grade. And in some cases, if your child is in third grade and they are not performing at third grade level, I would encourage you to go and do that before you do anything else. Get the child caught up to the end of first grade, because you will find it easier to get the child caught up to third grade if they're first caught up to first grade. And it may not take you a while. It may be very quick. If you take the assessment and see, oh, we only have these 5 lessons, and then my child is caught up to the end of first grade, then you can start looking up second grade standards, get them caught up there, and get them ready for third grade in that way. But you know, you got to have a strong foundation. Otherwise, you're building a house of cards that could come tumbling down at any point. Give them the strong foundation. They have a special right now in skills that if you buy 1 month, you get the rest of the summer for free. You can't beat that. But in any case, set them up for success. Find out what it is that they're going to be working on, and start to pave the path to success in that way. And you can find that online. All the state standards should be there. All right, we are going to now look at the A word, and I promised you earlier that we would look at it this time. This is, by the way, this is a wonderful documentary that's been being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He is having a birthday. In fact, I think it's even in this episode that he's having a birthday, and he's just gotten a new baby sister. So things are a little bit, you know, wonky for Jack Riley, but he's hanging in there, and he is having a growth of language and so many other social skills. He's doing quite tremendously. But I want you to look today. Our word for the day was SD, that discriminative stimulus, the thing you say or do to get the child to engage in the specific targeted behavior. So as we're watching, take a look and see if you can recognize the SDs. It should be the very clear thing that Jessica says or does that gets the child to do the behavior. And so see if you can see the 3-term contingent when she's working on something with him. She says something, he does the behavior, she reinforces. Take a look. What's the SD? What's the behavior? And what is the reinforcement for it? And we'll talk about it when we come back. This is the A word.
Sun's coming up.
How do you spell apple? Jack?
A-P-P-L-E.
We went to the mall last night and got him some new shoes, and he rode the carousel, and I watched him for like a half hour, and you would never guess he wasn't like every other kid in there, except he was smaller than a lot of them. They run around with
That's so funny.
reckless abandon.
It's so funny.
That's so funny.
Hey, what color do you want? Look, I have green, yellow, and pink. What color?
Yellow.
So what do you say?
Yellow.
Yes, you can. Close. There we go. Oh! Uh-oh! Should we make him stand? Should we make him jump? Here, let's make him jump. Ready? Boink! Uh-oh! Look! What is that? See, it's a footprint.
It's a footprint.
It's a footprint. Cool, you want to do it again?
Take it.
While Jessica and Jack Riley are playing with Play-Doh, they are working on his fine motor skills. They include pincher grasp for picking up food, rotating the wrist for closing and opening the door. Having fine motor skills are needed for daily living tasks.
Oh, coolness. Wow.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Whose birthday is it? Say it's my...
It's my
birthday. Say birthday.
Birthday.
Say
it's my birthday. It's my birthday.
Yeah. How old are you?
It's my...
I'm
3.
Yep. You're 3. Do this. Say 3.
3.
1, 2. Look. 3 fingers. Look. Right here. Look. 1, 2,
3.
3 fingers.
5 fingers.
Yeah, well, yeah, technically you do have 5. What is that?
A rabbit.
He's wearing a blue
Hat.
and a
Green
hat and a
red hat.
hat and a, oops! He's not wearing a hat.
Yellow hat.
Yeah, it's a yellow hat. Red.
Red shirt. Blue shirt. Yellow shirt. Green shirt.
Yeah, oops! He's wearing it upside down. It's
a hippo and dog.
good. It's
It's a rabbit and frog.
good.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good.
I have a question for you. Why is tacting important?
Tacting is important because it helps with language and conversation too. When we first start off, we just have him identify labels.
It's a ladybug.
And then we move into frames, like adding article adjectives to it, like it's the dog. What is it? Say it's. Yeah, it's a chicken. And then now we're having him add 2 objects. So he has to say it's a blank and a blank.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good. And then we'll move on to like add adjectives in front of the words too. So like what he does already, he'll say like it's purple socks, it's a red shirt.
Yellow suit. Blue suit. Red suit.
Just to help expand his language skills a lot more. Let's go, Jack Riley. You want to copy Susan? That's hilarious. That's so funny. You guys are so funny. Look at you guys.
Are we buddies? Are we twins?
Here, give your hand. You guys are so funny. What are you doing, Jack?
Are we sitting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you are thirsty.
Let's get you some water.
So cute. You even brought the chair over and everything. That's funny. Come on, let's get some milk, Jack. Say, come on, Suzanne.
Close yourself.
Okay, let's go.
Cow.
Too much laughing and giggling in here. That's a good thing.
Welcome back. That was the A word, and I asked you to notice this time all the different SDs. Remember that our jargon term for today is discriminative stimulus. It's a S with a capital D but shrunk down, right? The SD, the discriminative stimulus. It's the thing we say or do in order to signal to a child to do the behavior so that we can reinforce it, right? That's a really watered down version of what it actually stands for, but it's our working definition, right? So even in the beginning, the dad said, spell apple, right? And that is an SD. It's what you say or do. And so he spelled apple, and what did dad and the therapist do? They clapped. That was the reinforcement, and the little boy was smiling. He enjoyed that. Then the therapist, she said, I have blue, and I have green, and I have yellow, and she said, what color do you want? And he said yellow, and so she gave him the yellow. And then there were other SDs that she said, say it's a footprint. When she did the footprint, she said, what is it? And he wasn't doing it, and she said, say it's a footprint. That's the SD that she was, giving him the words that she wanted him to say. And then she reinforced it by saying the words again to him, strengthening it. And then later on, she said, say, it's my birthday. And when he said it, she said, yeah, that's reinforcement. Sometimes reinforcement doesn't have to be this big, huge thing. And with this child, when he started out, they were giving him big, huge things for reinforcement, but now they're kind of backing it off. And you'll notice that she doesn't reinforce every single time because, we're not going to go to college and every time, the child does something, go, yay, right? We back off of the skills that they're maintaining on their own because they're finding it reinforcing for themselves. I can't even read my own writing. There are different SDs that she gave him. She says, do this, and she holds up the finger and says, say 3. She says, look, That's an SD, right? And then he gets interaction when he does this. And she sits down with a book and she's getting him to tact. So in the beginning, she says the SD is, what is that, right? So technically, she's going for an impure tact. She's pointing it out to him. She's setting the stage for it and kind of prompting him. What is that? It's an SD, though. And when he does it, she pats his head, which he finds reinforcing. And then after that, she's able to just point to the different things. And he says, it's a frog, it's a hippo, it's a whatever. The pointing is still an SD. And she says, good and very good. Those are all reinforcers. So it's a never-ending thing. And sometimes, we don't even realize that we've been saying SDs. But when we do realize and we start to think in terms of SDs, we start to think in terms of being so clear that it passes the stranger test. This is something that Evelyn Gould talks a lot about that if a total stranger were to come in and the program is written up in such a way that anybody could walk in and if they read it, they could follow the instructions and do it. That if a total stranger came in and you said, stand here and point to this and say, what is it? They could do it. Anybody would be able to understand it. I'm having a lot of fun right now with that app that's called Draw Something. And it's really interesting to me because you have to draw something and put it into context. And I play with random people. I don't know who they are. I don't know how old they are. It's quite the education, right? Because I don't know if I'm playing with a 12-year-old kid or a 47-year-old. I have no idea, right? And you have to draw something to be clear to anybody what it is. And so my sort of litmus test is that I draw something and I show it to my son and say, what would this be? And the thing about it is that he just is really good. So it's not as effective as I would like it to be, but making something so clear that anybody could understand it. What would you have to do to make it 100% clear that this is what I want you to do? If there was, a language barrier, if there were a learning barrier, what would you say to make it abundantly clear? That's what we want our SDs to be, and especially in the beginning, to be incredibly clear. Over time, we're going to change the SD into different things so that the child's able to respond no matter if someone isn't clear. Because let's face it, the world does not function on everybody being clear, right? But in the beginning, we want to be really clear with our SDs. Have you ever seen, a lot of times they'll show this on one of those news programs at night, that they show dads and moms talking to kids. And it's really interesting, and it's maybe a little sexist because I think they're being general with it, but it tends to be that if a mom wants a child to do something, the mom will say, okay, well, what I want you to do is go get your shoes, put your socks on, and then tie your shoes, and after that, we're going to go someplace, so I really need you to hurry. If you would just go get your shoes and get your socks, put your socks on, and then we're going to get to words, like thousands of words to get a task done, whereas dads tend to be much more, and again, this is generalization, but dads tend to be much more succinct and say shoes now. And that sometimes with some kids, depending on their ages, dad gets a better response, right? Although sometimes the dads don't give enough information. So finding that mix of using enough words so that they do the actual thing you want them to do at the speed that they want them to do without overkill. I have a hard time with that, as I'm sure you can imagine. Okay, which is a good time for me to stop talking about it. We're going to be clear. That's what we want to do, is be clear with our SDs. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to address the question of the day. I want to remind you that at 11:20, I looked it up. At 11:20, we are going to be joined by Captain Jean Saunders of Project Lifesaver International. This is a wonderful organization that helps to locate and to prevent children being lost in tragic events happening. It's really an amazing thing. We're talking all day about managing stress, and if you've got an eloper, there's nothing more stressful than that. Living in the constant fear of what if they get out, and kids do. So stick with us at 11:20. Not Dr. Captain Gene Saunders from Project Lifesaver will be with us via Skype. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we are going to address the question of the day, which was, when you get a break, what's your favorite thing to do? Write in on Facebook right now and stick with us.
Here I stand, a man, someone who has overcome struggles, someone who has endured perceptions of what others thought of him, thinking he was stupid because he was autistic, or simply believing him to be nothing because he was different to them in their minds. But I stood my ground. I just wanted to say to the organization in general, alongside helping me to improve communicatively and socially, the other greatest gifts you gave me were the value of discipline and a good work ethic. To quote Anthony Kiedis, "To celebrate you is greater now that I can." You helped me to realize that the harder you work, the likelier you are to achieve success. Having had to work very, very hard to recover from autism, this discipline has continued to serve me well. I also realized that you taught me a lot about and instilled within me a quality of having compassion and sympathy for other people. That you will be concerned more with the needs and wishes of others than with your own is something that I'm awe of and I constantly strive to be. And in closing, the only way I can sum up all of you is love. Everything you do to help families in need, you do out of the sheer love of wanting to make a positive difference in people's lives. And as I stand here before you as a mature adult, I have to say that I'm extremely grateful for your unwavering loving commitments to helping others and me recover from potential life roadblocks and become active and contributing members of society. While I can't overcome obstacles without a will, I cannot have a will without the love of those supporting me. And without love, I am nothing. Thanks again so very much for your love, everything that you've done and continue to do. Please give my best wishes to your families, everybody else with Cardi wasn't here, and especially all of your clients and their kids. I'm confident that they too will be able to overcome, and I know that they'll be successful with what they do as long as they continue to put their minds, hearts, passions, and best efforts into it. Enough said.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's that time of day when we read some of the things that you guys have written into the question of the day. Our question today was, when you get a break, what is your favorite thing to do? And some of the responses that we got, one person who wrote in and said, just relax and read or listen to music. Having some me time is great. Another person who says, I like listening to the music, reading, but also dancing, traditional dancing, when I just have a little time or for myself, which is not often. And that's the case for a lot of us, that, you know, there isn't a whole lot of downtime. And I said that some of you were going to write in and say, what breaks, right? So somebody did and wrote in and said, what's a break, LOL? None for these parents. And I know. Another person who says, a break, yeah, right, LOL. And another who says, well, I'm signing up for IHSS services, so I'll have a break, thank you, God, but I enjoy being by myself up in the hills. And this one I find particularly interesting. A mom, because I can understand exactly, but a mom who writes in and says, I don't do breaks. To be honest, I don't want breaks. For me personally, I had all the breaks I needed before I had kids. That was my me time, and now it's our time. I hate being away from them, and anytime I need to go out without them, I think about them, only them, and hurry back to them. And I really relate to this. In fact, I was just having a conversation with my mother yesterday, because it is mine and my husband's 10th wedding anniversary this coming weekend, and we have plans to go away with our son. And my mother was saying, oh, it's too bad that you won't just send him to us, because it would be so lovely if we could just have him for a couple of days and you and your husband could go and have a couple of days, which we have never, ever done. And I said, you know what the truth is, Mom? We really enjoy being with him. We really do. And I said, it's not that I never want to have alone time with my husband, because that's a wonderful thing, but not overnight. I really, I don't have any desire to go away for 4 and 5 days at a stretch. I know that there are some of you who desperately would love that and would need that, and I just want to point out there's nothing wrong with that, but there are some of us that is not the thing that we want to do. I remember when my son, before he was diagnosed with autism, when he was like around 2, that a bunch of moms were talking about how they would like to go away for a spa weekend, that's what they would most like to do. And I was at a little get-together where all the families were there. It was like a picnic, and so the dads were there, the moms were there, and the kids were there, and the moms were saying, so we should get to do that. We should just plan it, and we should go for that spa weekend. And Shannon, you'd go, wouldn't you? And I said, no. No, no, I had plenty of time. Remember, I had my child at 40, and, I had been doing things. I really have no need to go do those things anymore. So it's different things for different, so I totally get it. But when I see somebody say, I don't do breaks at all, I know one of two things are true. Either you're going to need one at some point, or you're probably already getting little ones that are enough for you, that you're just not acknowledging as breaks. Because, I find that when my life works the best, it's when I have little itty bitty breaks here and there. I don't need 3 hours at a clip. In fact, 3 hours is a little too long for me. I find that I want to come home. But I will say this, that especially in the last year since I've gone back to work outside the home and I'm here, it's very interesting to me. I really prize my time to be at home in a way, and I'm much more grateful for my time at home. And it's interesting that in the last year, I try to work it so that I am only at work when my son is at school, and the rest of the time I am home. But there have been a couple occasions when I've had to go and do something else or stay later, and it's always interesting to me because for years after my son was able to talk, and even before he was able to talk, the front door would open, it would be Dad coming home from work, and that child would run and clutch him and say, when he could, say, Daddy's home, and it would be this exciting thing. And I never got that because I was never gone. And I get that sometimes now when I'm gone for short periods of time. If it's just, I have to be someplace and it's for a couple of hours and I come home, I get the mom's home, so glad to see you. Twice in the last 6 months I've left for overnight. It's the first time that I'd ever done that, and left my child two nights the first time and 3 nights the second time. And that's too long for all of us. I've seen that clearly. That's just too long. It's too long for me, and it's too long for him. And after the second one, and I came back and he said, Mom, I think you're working too much. I think you need to be home more. And I think that's a really important thing for me personally to hear. And by the way, it's what my gut said too. So I think, the break thing, it's different amounts for different people, but 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there. And I see women who have gotten it down to a science of getting their children in bed so that they have time to, whether it's watch TV or paint their toenails or read a book, it doesn't have to be this big, expensive, or even get a babysitter kind of thing to get a break. But we all need a break. We come back better, and I think our children appreciate us that much more. But I totally appreciate you're saying, I'm not so good with the break thing either. And another person says, more power to you. I couldn't think of a life without getting a break every now and again where I'm just me again. I feel like a better mom when I come back to my kids. Yeah, and again, I think, and I love that response, by the way, supporting that other parent and saying, how great for you. I need something different, but how great for you. I love it when we're coming from that space. Another person who wrote in, I had it. Where did it go? I lost it. Where did it go? Okay, here we go. Okay, the question of the day again, when you get a break, what is your favorite thing to do? Somebody wrote and said, lie down, or if I'm energetic, go out somewhere with my hubby. Another person says, go to the doctor and get it set and casted. I don't know what that means. And another person wrote in and said, what? I don't, A break? What? And somebody else said, lay down and talk to God. We all need our different time in lots of different ways, but it's what is reinforcing to you. That's what's most important. Because we're talking today and all this week about managing the stress. The stress comes from all different directions, making choices about your child's program and what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. It's stressful. I always used to say, I wish I could look into a crystal ball and just know what's right. But what helped me was to look at other families, what they had done, and to look at science so that I wouldn't waste time. And that's certainly why ABA was the thing that we went, okay, we're going to go all in with ABA because it's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It's even the Surgeon General referred to it as the gold standard in treatment for autism. So there you have it. And that eventually helped to reduce my stress. But heaven knows it took me a while. So if it's taken you a while, bless you. Stick with us. We're going to be talking about more things to do to manage stress. And one of the things that we're going to talk about when we come back is a language tip of how to help our children to language their emotions and deal with their stress. So stick with us. Back in just a few minutes.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1,
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our topic this entire week is managing stress. And we not only need to manage our own stress, but we need to help our children to manage their stress. One of the things that we see frequently with kids on the autism spectrum is that in the beginning they're going to engage in a lot of challenging behavior, sometimes because they don't have functional communication skills. They're frustrated. They can't make it clear to us what they want. And we have ways of helping them to get those functional communication skills so that they can tell us what they want. But what we will also see in a lot of cases, certainly not in all cases, and we certainly have seen some research recently to corroborate this, is that as our kids come fully more into the arena of being able to communicate, our kids overwhelmingly, more than typical kids, will have trouble dealing with anxiety and stress. All kids have anxiety, all kids have stress, right? But it's how well they're able to deal with it. And it can be extra difficult for our kids because they're having to catch up, and there's a lot that is sensory input and things that can make it more difficult for them because there's more to deal with, I think. Not 100% sure about that, but in any case, as a parent, we not only have to deal with all of our stress, but we have to, in some way, give the child tools to deal with their stress. Because what does a child do when they're stressed? What does an adult do with their stress, right? A lot of times, people will go to engaging in behavior that is not necessarily beneficial, but it is somehow soothing in the moment. Think about adults that you know, whether it's drinking in excess, eating in excess, you know, things that comfort there's an immediate reinforcement for it, but the long term, it's not reinforcing, right? And still it's difficult to combat because, you know, they're doing it to comfort themselves. So for our kids, it can be other things like repetitive behaviors that they engage in. Some kids will be, I'm going to sneeze, oh, excuse me. Some kids will bite. We see teenagers that cut themselves, and you think, but that's, you know, that's harmful. Well, but in the moment, for whatever reason, it is in some way reinforcing for them. So if we can get there beforehand, this is one of the things that we talk about a lot with ABA, is that for every behavior, there's something that happens before, and then there is an immediate consequence, right? And sometimes we look at the consequences and make sure that they're consistent and that they're not getting a reward for it. Other times it's easier to go for the antecedent and see if you can't change the circumstances that lead up to the behavior. Well, if we can teach our children language skills, to language what they're feeling and to understand what emotions are, that's part of the battle. I won't say that it's all of the battle, but it's certainly part of the battle. We see all the time with kids, whether they're on the spectrum or not, that they have an emotion and it feels like the be-all, end-all, that it is very life and death in the moment for them. And this doesn't go away when they're 2, right? Read Romeo and Juliet, and you see these young people that they feel like, you know, this is it. This is all that's ever going to happen. This is the first time I've been truly in love, and I'm not going to survive it. And if it doesn't work out, I'm not going to survive it. They don't have that life experience to know, you know, you will survive it if things don't work out. And that there's more to life than just this moment, because emotions are powerful. But if we can very early on talk about emotions, what they are, demonstrate to children to be able to recognize emotions on other people, and recognize it on themselves, to project the emotions that they want to, so that if they're feeling happy, that they're smiling and other people can see that they are happy, and to language emotions and frustrations. You know, it's that thing that you hear all the time, parents saying to kids who are verbal, when, you know, there's like fists flying, right? And they go, use your words. Because we know that if we can have people talking about what they're upset about, that there's going to be less aggression, right? So how do we do that with our kids? Well, there's lots of different ways that we can teach emotions to a child, and we always want to have it be both expressively and receptively, so that they're going to recognize it in other people. That's going to help with perspective taking. And you see in Temple Grandin's movie on HBO that her mom and her aunt went around with a Polaroid, and they took pictures, had her make different faces faces and took pictures and said, you know, this is Temple happy and this is Temple sad, so that she would know and could practice those things so that she could project the emotion that she wanted to be projecting, because her face kind of wasn't agreeing with what she was feeling inside, but also so she could begin to recognize in other people when they were feeling an emotion. We can do that with our kids. We can do the same thing and take pictures. Now we don't have to do it with a Polaroid. That's what digital is all about. I always say that's one of the great tools to have in your house when your child is diagnosed with autism is a really good, inexpensive digital camera that has the ability to go from picture to video with sound with a click of a switch, right? Oh, the things you're going to use that for. It's just amazing. But take pictures of them. Take pictures of other people. Look through a magazine and look at pictures of people in magazines. And a lot of times it's overboard in a magazine because they're conveying emotion. You know, there's that ad where everybody's like, you know, and making faces like this, so you can point to the face and say, what's she feeling? We do this all the time with TV, still to this day. Now it's like a big joke in the family, but for a while it was one of his lessons. We would sit and watch American Idol, and I didn't come up with this. I'd learned this from another parent on one of my support groups, that they said, we turn off the sound, you know, the singer sings, and then we turn off the sound and look at the judges' faces and look at the contestants' face and try to figure out what they're feeling based on their bodies, their gestures, and their faces. Does the singer feel like they did a good job? Did the judges like it? Can you tell with the sound down? Really very informative. But we start to identify and label, and we can start with happy and sad, right? But then we branch out into all these other things. And we always say that when your child is having a tantrum, it's not the time. That is not the moment in which we label. But before the tantrum happens, absolutely, because sometimes that's the thing that heads the tantrum off at the pass. So that if you see your child ramping up, right, you can say, you know what, I know you're feeling frustrated, or I know you're feeling sad. Once your child really understands these terms, because you've done all the prerequisite work and gone through the magazines and done it on TV, taken the pictures of them, it's amazing when you language that and say to somebody, I know you're feeling sad, or I see that you're feeling frustrated, because you know what usually happens right then is that it all comes up and they cry and go, I'm frustrated, right? And then you have this moment and there's no tantrum. That it's just... and it's not just our kids on the spectrum. That kind of thing, labeling what somebody's feeling for them is very effective with all kinds of people, because people go, that's it. That's it exactly. And the anger washes away and it's the emotion. I'm frustrated. Exactly. That's exactly what I am. And then you can talk about, well, why? And what do you have control over here? And that sometimes it's okay that you're frustrated. I understand that you're frustrated. In that moment, you're giving them language about what they're feeling. You're validating them and saying, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And really, when we're upset, isn't that the thing we all want the most? Is to be told, I hear you. I see you. I see what's happening. It doesn't fix it, right? Because we can't always fix it. But to be able to language it. And for our kids, boy, it's just like inflating a balloon and they just go, yes, I'm frustrated. I love the fact that now my son is much better at identifying his emotions than I am. In fact, he'll do that to me sometimes. I'll be someplace and I'm just mad, right? I'm just mad about something, and he'll say, Mom, you seem really frustrated. I see that you're frustrated, and I go, oh, yeah, that's it exactly. I'm frustrated because I can't change this. And all the anger, gone. Because a lot of times anger is just the mask, because we can't, it's easier to be angry, isn't it? It's so much easier to be angry. I'll say that to my husband sometimes, because he says, oh, you just get so mad at me. And I go, no, because I can get angry at you, because I know you're not leaving. I can get angry at you, and anger I can handle. It's all the other things that I can't fix, right? If I'm in the grief is much harder to be in than it is to be angry. But when somebody says, oh, you're feeling grief, and they label it for you, you go, yes, I'm feeling the grief. We can do that for our kids and give them the ability to label their emotions and know that it's okay. It's totally okay. You're going to be okay. And even to say to them, what would you like to do about it? What can you do about it? That's a great question when they're old enough and have gotten to that point that you can't start there, right? But to say, you're right, you're frustrated. What would you like to do about it? Oh, what a wonderful, wonderful thing. Because it's interesting what they will say. Absolutely interesting what they will say. I shared on the show about watching The A Word with my son. And he was looking, we were watching it on my phone, and he was looking at it, and he said, "Is that me?" Because he recognized some of the lessons and recognized the therapist. I said, "No, honey, that's not you. That's another little boy." And the mom had to go outside, and she was having a hard day and feeling a lot of emotions because it was a difficult day for Jack Riley. And so she was kind of crying. And he said, "Why is the mom so upset? Nothing bad's happening to her." And I said, "No, but it's her son. And, you know, it's really hard sometimes to watch your child struggle." And he said, "Oh, well, you know, when I was having therapy, was it hard for you?" You know, big. And I said, "Yeah, some days I would be outside the door, sitting outside the door crying because you were having a hard time." He says, "Oh, Mom, I was okay. I was just frustrated." What a wonderful thing to hear from my 8-year-old. I know 30-year-olds that can't say things like that. But if we give our children the ability to language how they're feeling, they are happier in the long run and their stress is reduced. It's not going to make it go away completely, but it does help. So spend some time languaging emotions for them. Not in the moment, but looking at labeling different emotions. You can do it with a book. What's she feeling right now? Frustrated. I was mad the other day and I said to Jem, "What am I feeling?" He goes, "Oh, anger." I said, "Yes, that is exactly right." And then we could talk about why I was angry. And ultimately he was like, "Oh, I don't think you're as much angry as you are hurt." Yes, that's the thing. Anger usually is masking something else, and my kid got it first try. In any case, teaching language, teaching how to language emotions, really helpful for our kids. We're going to take a break. When we come back, it is time for the myth of the day. So stick with us. Hi, we're here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And today I'm thrilled to have her here because we're going to talk about manding. What is manding?
A request that you would make of another person.
Why is manding one of the first things that seems to come up in most programs?
Okay. Well, a baby requests for his mother's attention by crying or by reaching. And so it's one of the first ways that you let another person know what you need. And then that other person reinforces you by either picking you up or giving you something to drink or something to eat. And so many of our clients aren't really good at that once we start a program with them. And unfortunately, many of them engage in inappropriate manding. Screaming, kicking, biting. And so what we're trying to do early on is no longer reinforce the inappropriate ways of asking and rather reinforce the appropriate ways of asking. And as we teach them an appropriate way to ask for, "Mom, play with me, can I have juice?" or, even more simply, "help," then we see those inappropriate demands decreasing and the appropriate demands increasing, because the child's wants and their desires aren't really changing, but we're teaching them the right way to get their needs met.
So manding doesn't have to actually be spoken. It can be nonverbal as well.
And that's exactly right. They could exchange an icon. And if I bring you an icon with a cup on it and hand it to you, and you bring me a juice cup, then we've made an exchange. And so there is what Skinner would call verbal behavior. You have reinforced my request for a cup or for juice.
So when we say verbal behavior, we're not talking about vocal behavior necessarily.
That's right.
It's just that it's a conversation of some sort.
What is reinforcing to the child? The man is evoked by the child's desire or their need for something. So early on, we may arrange the situation where I know that they're interested in the juice and they're reaching for it. I may hold it back to just say juice or ja or whatever is appropriate for that child. And then as soon as they emit any sort of response, give a high level of praise and then immediately give them the juice. But what controls the man is that specific reinforcer. So of course, if the child asks for a juice cup and you bring something else, then they're not being reinforced with what they asked to have.
Okay.
What do you want?
What do you want?
Good job.
You say wafer, please. Wafer, please. Good talking. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Daddy.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're talking about managing stress this entire week, and not only for ourselves, but also for our children. And it's time for the myth of the day. And this is something that I think it's really important that we talk about. We talk a lot about bullying and that we don't always know what our kids think. We don't always know what they feel, right? Especially in the early days before we've helped them to be able to language their thoughts and their feelings, what feelings are. And it's not just our kids on the spectrum, right? But they find it particularly difficult. And there's always that question of, well, how much are their actual feelings going to be hurt? And there seems to be this pervasive idea throughout the neurotypical community that kids who have autism's feelings can't be hurt. This is the hugest myth that there is. First of all, a lot of our kids have skills in different ways, and a lot of times they do realize when someone's making fun of them or being mean to them, and they feel it as poignantly and sometimes more poignantly, but don't always have the way of letting us know. So this idea that they don't have feelings, that they're checked out and spaced out and aren't going to feel when people are hurting their feelings or being verbally or otherwise abusive to them is under the heading of steaming pile of poo, right? They do. And they feel it in different levels. And somebody was pointing out to me the other day that even if they, in the moment, are not bothered by it, it is the kind of thing that as a child gets more aware and learns more skills, it totally has the potential to be something that is hurtful to them retroactively. I gotta be honest with you, that wasn't even something that had occurred to me. But there is that possibility with our kids. So we have to be especially mindful of educating people around our child and not having them treat our children as if they are a potato that is there in the room. They have thoughts, they have feelings, and they must be treated, you know, one of the things that my wonderful co-host for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy Allspaw Jackson, one of the things that she's fond of saying is that we must assume intelligence. And I think it goes even further than that. We must presume feelings and we must have empathy. Always. So important that we consider people's feelings. Whether they can demonstrate to us their feelings or not, we must presume that there are feelings. I don't understand people who just assume, but even within my world and some friends' children, they just don't get it. But it is our job to make sure that people know our kids think and they feel, and that it is not okay to treat them as if they don't. So we'll carry that message forward. We're going to take a break. Don't forget that at 11:20 we are going to be joined by Captain Gene Saunders from Project Lifesaver. This is an amazing organization that I think you're going to be interested in hearing about, so stick with us. Hi, welcome. I'm here with Sue Cho, and Sue, tell us what you do.
I'm a senior clinical supervisor, and so I provide supervision to children in some of our clinics, and I also am a trainer for CARD, and so I provide training for all the supervisors that are either learning to be a supervisor or are current supervisors, and I also provide workshop services to children all over the U.S., Caribbean, Europe, South Africa, and Asia.
Very cool. And you're here today to talk with us about teaching prepositions.
Yes.
Help us to know how we can teach this.
Okay, so when you're teaching prepositions, there are a variety of ways that you can teach it. When you're teaching your first several targets, you want to make sure whatever you teach has a distinct front and a distinct back. Probably go with simpler and then more complex when you're teaching your beginning targets. One way you can do it is always have the same item to use as your reference point. You can also do it where you're constantly changing your reference point. So maybe within a sitting I decide now I'm going to use a truck, or I'm going to use a box, or I'm going to use a chair. But that also depends on how flexible the child you're teaching is with learning with multiple items. This lesson is actually a little more on the abstract side. So if you find that your child's having difficulty with lessons maybe such as attributes, that you may want to start off where you use multiple objects as your reference point. So I use a helmet, I use a chair, I use a car, but I never turn the position of the item.
Right.
And so once they learn if the item is in the same position where the object goes, then you can start turning your item or putting the child in a different position in relationship to the item.
So you start with receptive, though, where you're asking them to do it. They're not having to say anything, they just have to demonstrate their knowledge of it. Then how do you teach the expressive? How and when?
So what we do is then we'd probably work on manding so that the child can request for the position. Let's say the child wants a particular color, but we're not working on colors. We're actually trying to work on prepositions. So I have a yellow block on the top. I have 2 white cars, but maybe there's a slight distinction, and they want the one that's in front of the helmet. So then they would have to say in front. So then they get the one that's in front.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Or when you're asking about tacting, at first I start off and I say, where is the block? And the child says, on top. I have some children that actually have a really hard time learning it receptively. I try to make them motivated to ask for a position then.
And how do you motivate them to ask for the position?
You want to put things there that you know that they like.
It seems like one of the keys to this is having really preferred items to do the exercises with.
Definitely, definitely. Because they're more likely to pay attention too then.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm so mad at myself because on Friday, I was looking on my Facebook and watching on my phone, and somebody had put up a meme, and I'm going to have to paraphrase because I cannot find it. And I should have shared it, but I can't share from my phone, and so I can't find it. But a mom had done a meme, and there was a beautiful picture of, and if somebody can find it, and email it to me because I can't find it anywhere. But anyway, a beautiful picture of a little boy in, I think it was like either a dinosaur or an alligator costume at Halloween, looking up at the camera. And the mom said, you know, my child, and the name of the child was, you know, born on this day, and then, you know, like 6 years down the road, they had a date and said that my child eloped from my house and was found in a neighbor's pond, and that you know, a subsequent date, like a day later, that you know, she was in the hospital and kissed her child goodbye. And there were statistics on it about the fact that I think it was like 94% of children with autism elope at some point. Some rude number, like 94%, and that it's a mother's nightmare, an absolute mother's nightmare. And in the meme it said, you know, contact Project Lifesaver International, that they've saved it's more than 2,500 children and have yet to have lost a life. And I was really struck by it because, first of all, this mother's pain, I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine. And I think it's every autism mother's nightmare. And I think that most of us have had a moment when our child eloped, right? It's much more common for us to sit and talk about when that happened to us than, oh, thank goodness that never ever happened to me. I have shared before on the show that when we came to ABA, one of the big things that, we met a family and they said, here's a book. And you need to go get ABA. You need to go to the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, which is just down the street. And here's a book about one mom's experience, and it was called, A Real Boy by Christina Adams. We've had her on the show. Love this book. Think it's a worthwhile read for anyone who's going through this journey. And in it, she talks about the ins and outs of how they started ABA and what it was like, how stressful it was for her, how stressful it was for her marriage. She has subsequently divorced and remarried. But there is a moment in the book when her child is in the backyard and then he is gone. And I read that. And it's like, a 15-minute period of time that they are looking for their child before they find him. But it literally sent shivers down my spine because I knew that our child was at risk for that. We had rearranged. We were in a small 2-bedroom condo. My child never slept in his own room because I couldn't trust. We had looked at every kind of bars to put on the window, and it was that thing of, well, if we put bars on the window and then there's a fire, that I didn't want my child to die as a result of the fact that we were, enclosing him within the room. So he slept in a bed in our room, in a separate bed in our room, until he was, I think when he was 6, was the first time that he got his own bedroom, because I could trust him enough. But then we still had to we moved and we had a bedroom that was across the hall. And I don't think that I started sleeping good until about a year and a half ago, quite honestly. But the things that we did hoping that we could prevent our child from eloping. We installed several different locks and we tried different siren locks. My husband would have to get up and go to work at 4:30 in the morning, and I would get up with him and go and we had a hotel lock on. But still, there was a day when my son was in between therapy sessions, was very early into therapy, but he was starting to have language, and he said to me, he had a little poo hut, a little foldable thing that he could, you just went like this and it went into this little hut. And he decided he wanted to take the poo hut and he wanted to go for a picnic. And that was something that we would do sometimes during the break, that, the first therapist would come in the morning and then we would have a break for lunch. And a lot of times I would take him outside, get him to run some yayas out, and we'd sit on the lawn in the condo complex, sometimes with the poo hut, and have a picnic, and then come back in, and then by then the next therapist would arrive and we would have the afternoon session. Sometimes there'd be 2 afternoon sessions, right? This was intensive ABA. And, excuse me, he was starting to have language, and he said to me, picnic. And I said, yes, we'll do a picnic. Mama has to get lunch. And he said, picnic again. And I said, just a minute, Mommy has to get lunch. And so I was in the kitchen and I was getting lunch ready, and I was on the phone. Because, and I think it was a business call, so it wasn't me just, but somewhere in the back of my mommy brain, I heard noises that I could not explain, and I went, oh my gosh, and realized that my child had gotten up on a chair. It was only like 10 seconds, but he'd gotten up on a chair, taken the hotel lock off, moved the chair back, had taken his poo hut, and he had gone out the door and down the steps and was halfway down the sidewalk as I ran screaming after him. But he was maybe 20 feet from the street. I don't know that he would have gone in the street, but when I tell you that it took 20 years off my life, we both know I'm not kidding or exaggerating, right? Because it did. And I realized in that moment that wasn't anything that I could do in that moment that was going to make absolute sure that my son was not going to elope. That we were working on a series of things, and boy, did we step that up to make sure that he did not need to elope. And there are ABA things that you can do to prevent a child from needing to elope. You can give them language skills to say, and he was saying picnic, picnic, and I said yes. But he didn't hear the when mommy gets lunch together, right? He was just going. And thank God I can laugh about it now, right? Because I sure couldn't have on that day, and I sure couldn't have for like a year afterwards. And I still, like, my stomach turns thinking about that. And I know I'm not alone, that every parent that I've ever met describes one panicky moment, and most of us get lucky. But the other thing that the statistics said in that meme was that the vast majority of kids who die, who have autism, die because of drowning. What a terrible, terrible thing. And what I noticed on the meme was that they were saying, you know, get Project Lifesaver, and I thought, wow, how incredible, because that's who we're having on the show on Monday. And I'm thrilled that in just a little while, in 20 minutes, in fact, we are going to have Captain Gene Saunders with us talking about what Project Lifesaver does, how they can help you to be in a place now with technology, with the use of technology, so that you don't have to be where I was thinking there is nothing that I can do in this moment. I have a long-range plan for teaching my child how to communicate and how to be safe so that he doesn't elope, and I think that that's really important to have that in place. But how do you get from here to there until the child has an understanding? It can take years off of your life. And talk about stress. You know, if you don't know that your child is safe, then you are going to be stressed out the door, around the corner, and down the block, right? And I could sit here and tell you everything under the sun, but until you know that your child is safe, you're not going to get good sleep. You're not going to be able to take a break. You're not going to be able to manage your stress. So we are going to be talking with Captain Saunders about that. But you notice it's time for the NET tip of the week. NET stands for Natural Environment Training. Well, one of the things that we can do to reduce our stress in our long-range plan is talk about safety with our kids and teach our kids safety within everything that they do. Remember that when we're working on something in an NET environment, that we are mindful of what the child wants to do. So let's say that you know, you have a little girl and you're playing with a dollhouse, and that's what the little girl has requested, to play with a dollhouse. And you have that opportunity while you're playing with the dollhouse to talk about safety rules in the house and in the community. You can say, oh, it's time for the fire drill, right? And all of the people in the dollhouse have to find their way out. And each time you do this, you know, and you can do the fire drill where they go from different places, but you can even have a pretend fire within, you know, that you put the fire in the upstairs bedroom and try to figure out what, you know, if they can't get to the stairs, how do the children in the upstairs bedroom get out? You'd be surprised at how much of an impression those kinds of things can make on a child when you put it in the context of play. They're getting the experience, but they're in a safe place, and it's not causing them undue stress, but they're getting to rehearse it in their heads. This is what we do when this happens. So you can work on all kinds of safety things within the context of play, whether it is playing with a dollhouse, or if you have costumes, that's another great thing that our kids love to do, doing socio-dramatic play, and let them be the firemen sometimes and you be the fireman sometimes. Talking about the fact that firemen are not scary people. I've said before about, we took our son to the firehouse, we took him to the sheriff's station and had him meet those people, and did that in a very natural environment kind of circumstances. So whatever your child is doing, you have the opportunity to work on safety. Of course, whenever you're out in public, it is a total organic experience. You've got the location, all kinds of things to work on, right? That if you're in the parking lot, go over the rules of, well, what do we do in the parking lot? Don't be afraid. I know you're busy. I know you're so busy, but don't be afraid to go over the rules and then say, hey, we're going to rewind. This is a game that we play in our house. We did this the other day because my son spoke to me in a way that I did not find appropriate, and we're trying to work on that. And I said to him, here's the deal. I didn't care for that. That didn't work. What could you have said? He said, well, I could have said this, that, and the other thing. And I said, well, shall we push the rewind button? I'll give you one more chance. Should we do the rewind button? And if you're able to demonstrate that you can do it, then here's what I'm going to do and offer some reinforcement. He said, okay. So we go and pretend that we go and rewind, and then it's like nothing happened. I go back and say the thing, and he gets to demonstrate the skill. Don't be afraid to do that, right? Kids find that we don't want to make it so reinforcing that they're deliberately misbehaving so that you can hit the rewind button, right? But it's okay to rewind 3 and 4 times, because if what you want to do is teach them a new skill, why not do it 3 and 4 times? And I can think of a couple of years ago being in the parking lot with my son, and he wasn't paying attention. He didn't get hit by a car because I was there and providing the cushion, but we walked across the main thing from the store to the parking lot, and he wasn't paying attention. And I said, hey, I think we got to hit the rewind button. And we walked backwards, being very careful. There were no cars coming. Walked backwards, and I said, let's try this again, and you're going to be the person who says when it's time to go. And he was at an age where that was appropriate for him. And so we looked, and he said, yeah, okay, it's time to go. And so we walked across, and I said, that was really good, and heaped on the praise and said, let's try it again, right? But he thought it was hilarious to rewind and walk backwards across the street, so he was willing to do that. And again, we were careful doing that. But we can, in the natural environment, teach things. Key is making it reinforcing. And letting it come about within the circumstances that they find interesting. There were times when we would go, there was one time in particular where we had called ahead, we'd been working up to it, where we had a therapist who talked about what happens when you get lost from mom. Well, first I call her name, and then if I can't, and I look for her just for a couple of seconds, and if I can't find her, then I go back to the desk and I have them announce that, what my name is and what my mom's name is. So then we went to a store, we went to a Target, and we went immediately up to the desk with the therapist and with my son and said, we are about to run an experiment. The therapist is going to stay with him. I am going to get lost from him, and he is going to come here and ask you are you willing? And they said, we would be delighted to help you out. Gotta love that. And that is what we did. Now, it was hilarious to me because everybody was on board, and everybody was made aware of the fact that we were going to be doing this, and I had more panic than anybody else about the whole thing, and my son was very matter-of-fact about it. I felt terrible as I slunk away from him in the aisle. He was looking at Legos, and I just dipped away, and he very quickly saw that I wasn't there. I had a really hard time getting to the front of the store without him seeing me. I had to be very creative about doing it. And then he went up to the front of the store and said, can you help me? My mom is lost. Not that he was lost, but my mom is lost, which was very sweet. But, it's those kinds of things that we can do with our children in the natural environment that will help them long term. We can't expect that just doing something once, though, is going to get the job done, right? We would never allow our schools to do one fire drill, right? We wouldn't have an expectation that an actual fire evacuation would go well with just one fire drill. And remember, with our kids, we got to do more of it and more often. So we don't want to make our children paranoid and afraid, right? But it's always good to talk about safety rules and safety behavior when things aren't stressful, and reinforce. I think they feel more confident when they know they have skills that no matter what happens, they'll know what to do. And even to the point where when life things have happened, like, when the tsunami happened and other things like that happened, my child and say, you know, I'm really scared. And I would say, about what? Well, what if a tsunami came? And you know what? We were able to sit with him and say, okay, what if a tsunami came? What would we do? What's the right steps to take? If there were a tsunami, what would you do? And that is what calmed him down. Knowing, okay, well, I would use my head and I would think through it this way, and here are some things that I could do, and so we would all be okay. You know, of course, there's no way of guaranteeing that, but we don't say that to the kids, right? That's what we have to live with. That's when we have to manage our stress, but we give them steps that they can take so that they are comforted. Okay, we got to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back and do the DTT tip for teaching safety, sort of the opposite end of the spectrum here. And then shortly after that, at 11:20, we are going to be joined by Captain Gene Saunders from Project Lifesaver International. You're not going to want to miss it, so stick with us.
Hi, I'm here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And she's going to talk to us about something that I'm not entirely clear on, tacting.
Tacting is when you make a comment on the environment, and then another person may reinforce that with non-specific reinforcement.
Can you explain to me what the difference between a tacting program is and an expressive labeling program?
In an expressive labeling program, typically the therapist holds up a card, maybe with a turkey on it, and the therapist would say, "What is this?" referencing the picture. And the child would respond, "Turkey." The child is labeling the item. With a tact, it's a comment on the environment. So it can be evoked by a smell. So if I walk into the house and I smell Thanksgiving dinner, I can say, turkey. Or if I hear gobble, 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 I can say, that's a turkey. So it's a comment on the environment, which is different than just naming the item.
How do you get a child to comment on the environment? That's got to be hard.
It is. We use different prompts. Most of the time we use vocal prompts. For example, we may look through a book and point to the picture of an item and say, "Oh, look, it's Nemo." Say, "Nemo," and then reinforce the child for responding. Or we may say, "What do you see?" Say, "Nemo." And then eventually we would want to fade our point away. So I may say, "Look, Nemo," and then the child is referencing that and then also saying, "That's right, I see Nemo." And then later fading completely away so the picture of Nemo itself evokes the comment. If we're working on something auditory, maybe we have a cow on the table and we play the environmental sound in front of them, maybe give them a vocal prompt to say, "It's a cow," and the child may say, "It's a cow." And then we might fade the visual of the cow and they just hear the sound. And we prompt them by saying, say, "It's a cow," or "I hear a cow," and then eventually fade until the sound itself evokes the comment. The goal is to get towards spontaneous tacting, where the child can walk around and comment on the novel things in the environment that he hears or sees. And so that's a great way to sort of bridge to that point. Tacting is really important to get to higher level lessons of interverbal behavior. Commenting on things that are private events, or commenting on things that I can't see that you're feeling, like your stomach hurts. But it's important to have those tacts in place so you can get to those later programs.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're getting ready for Captain Jean Saunders to join us at 20 after the hour, so just a few minutes from now. Until then, we want to talk about some DTT tips for teaching safety, because whatever we do, we want to be teaching safety, right? It's important to understand, though, that it is a work in progress. And while our kids are learning to be safe, we have to take extra and sometimes extraordinary measures. It's like I can't talk today. Extraordinary measures to make sure that they are safe while we're teaching them. I really think of it as this, two-handed thing. On the one hand, you're teaching them safety, and on the other hand, you are preparing as if they're not learning it. And that's the only way to be. If you're only preparing as if they're not learning it and not teaching to them, then you're doing them a disservice, and you're going to be in that mode for the rest of your life. And if you're only teaching them methods to be safe without making sure that while they're learning it that they are safe, you are running a grave risk. So doing them both together, I think, is really super important. We just talked about teaching it in the natural environment and how important that is and how many opportunities there are to teach it in the natural environment. Well, we also want to teach it from a DTT perspective. DTT stands for discrete trial teaching, and we can do this. DTT is a really important part of ABA, as is NET. I really can't imagine trying, when my son was little and we would want to tackle a skill that any other child just would have started to get on their own. It always seemed overwhelming to me. And people would say, well, just teach them how to do that. Well, thanks a million. But how do you teach something to somebody that most people just pick up and my child didn't? How do you begin to teach it? I mean, I'm creative and I am a former teacher, and I can think of 1,000 ways once they start to learn it, what to do from there, but how to start? How in the hey nani nani do you start? Well, DTT was the perfect answer for me for that. But I can't say DTT without reminding all of you, it's just the first little step, right? And a lot of people think, oh, DTT, it's the be-all, end-all. No. If you only teach something in a DTT perspective, the child is never going to make the skill completely their own. Not if they weren't able to grasp it from the beginning. So we want to do DTT, but it's like step one of a 300-step process, right? I'm exaggerating a little, but DTT, a great way, a great tool for a very specific thing, introducing a skill. But don't expect it to do the whole job, is what I really want to say. Okay, so how do we do DTT with safety? Well, we set up very specific circumstances in which we have a behavior that we want to see, and then we give it SD, the behavior happens, and then we reward it. So, for instance, and you can do this at a table, but DTT doesn't have to be completely at the table, but we introduce the idea of, how do we safely cross the street? And so, we set up a circumstance where we tell the child, maybe go out to the curb, and we go through this different steps and say the first thing that we do is look both ways. And then the next thing that we do, whatever the steps are that you determine for the task analysis to be able to safely cross the street, right? And it's going to be different for different people. I know my mother does the 3-point thing, and this was what we taught to my son. It's not how everybody does it, and there's not one way to do it, right? But my mother's thing was always that, and I got to think about it, which way, that you look to the left first because the cars are going to come from that. So you look to the left, you look to the right, and you look to the left again. So it's 3 points. And when you see that no cars are coming, then you step into the street and you keep looking first to the left because that's the direction they're coming from, then to the right as you cross the street and get to the curb, right? So, breaking it down into little steps. So, but before you go out to the curb to do it, after you've gone to the curb and demonstrated, okay, this is the way you do it, but you're not going to expect the child to do it, you're going to keep going over the steps, right? So we're going to do this in a very DTT fashion, at least for part of the time, to build the skill, where you sit at the table with a child, and you can do this with lots of different kinds of stimuli, that you could do it with pictures if the child is particularly visual, where you could go to the curb, take pictures of all the different steps, right? And so you put the pictures out for the child and say, okay, we're going to walk across the street. What's the first step that we do? And the prompt is that you put down the picture of the child looking to the left. And then you've got a picture of the child looking to the right. And then you've got maybe a picture of the child looking to the left again, a child stepping into the street, a child being in the street and looking, and a child getting to the other side, right? So these are prompts for the child to learn this skill, right? You've gone over the rules, you physically went down and did it, you took pictures of it, and now you're pointing to them. And the child is in some way languaging each one of those different things, even if it's signing or gesturing or whatever, and pointing. Now, you don't have to do it with pictures, right? It depends on how the child learns. But we want for the child to be able to go through these steps and have it memorized first in their heads and then in their bodies. So we're going to do it over and over and over again. They have an understanding of it. Now we go to the curb. You know, it's still, you know, it's in the natural environment, but we're still going to do it in a very DTT way, that we're going to do it at a time when there's no other distractions. We're not going to be working on anything else. We have a specific reinforcement in mind of something that we're going to do, and maybe we're going to work on it individually and not try to do the whole process. Chaining is something that's really, really beneficial, that there's one part of the skill that we ask the child to do, and then we do the rest of that, so that it doesn't become so overwhelming. So in the beginning, maybe we just ask the child to look to the left and the right and the left again, but we make the determination of when to step into the street. And we watch as we're crossing the street to see, so the only part of it that we're asking the child to do is look left, right, left. Now, if that's overwhelming to the child, we can, you know, ask them to just look to the left. And then we say, I'm looking to the right and I'm looking to the left again. It's safe. Let's go into the street, right? Different speeds for different children, but eventually, you know, and we reinforce the child. The child looks to the left and says, it's okay. We go, nice job, fabulous. We cross the street safely and we get to the other side. We tickle the child. We throw them up in the air. We go, you're such a big girl. You're such a big boy. You're doing so great. And maybe there's, you know, other reinforcement. They get to play with a toy now, whatever it is. But the difference here between DTT and NET is that usually in NET, you just have the one shot. I said I like to rewind in the NET and give them another shot. But in DTT, we're not making a big deal about it. We're just going to do it again and again and again. We might go out there and cross the street 10 times, literally, because we're giving the child an opportunity. And we're taking data on it. We're seeing, okay, how much of this are they really able to do? Because if we see that the child is able to look left, right, left, and determine whether it's safe, and that they've got it down, and they're able to do it 100% of the time, because remember, with safety, we're not going to mess around with 80% of the time, right? That's not good. 80% of the time is not going to help you if a car is coming. It's got to be 100% of the time. So they're getting it 100% of the time. Then we add on that they're going to say it's safe to go in the street. And then once we have that, we're going to add on the next part of it until they're able to do the whole thing themselves. But we haven't overwhelmed them. We've done the rest of it while they worked on one little part of the skill. And we make sure that we're always, always, always reinforcing and making it clear. SD behavior reinforcement. SD behavior reinforcement. We always want to be keeping our homes and our environment safe, but be working on helping the child to determine what choices to make. It's going to take a while. I think a handful of times while I was standing there across the street allowed my son to cross by himself. But he is 9, and I would not be like, oh, cross the street and I'll stay in the house. Sorry, I'm not there yet. And I don't mind admitting that. However, he's made tremendous progress, and I know that it's just a matter of time, but just I'm managing my stress. I'm not thinking about that. Today, he's not crossing the street by himself. All right. We need to take a little bit of a break. When we come back, we are going to be joined by Captain Gene Saunders from Project Lifesaver International. This you are not going to want to miss. So stick with us. We're going to find out about how to make our kids safe in their environment. We'll be back in a moment.
My name is Crystal Shepard,
I'm Pete.
and our son Logan was diagnosed in February of 2003. Wow, it seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
We were fortunate enough to find CARD when he was 20 months old. My husband called and said, "You need to go to this place. I've researched it. You need to go right now." So I went and knocked on the door, and we found Doreen.
Doreen, we sat down, and I'll never forget what she said. She goes, "Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get him caught up and make sure he never falls behind again." I was like, that's it, you know?
He's a very fun, popular kid. He
Rock
never
star.
Rock star. He's a drummer, quite an accomplished drummer. He never stops talking. He's got a funny story and a smile for everybody that he meets. And it's pretty amazing. He's a completely different kid. Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
My name's Monica.
And I'm Mark.
And we have a son, Riley, and he is autistic.
Riley was almost completely non-communicative at the time that he was diagnosed. Really no language, no interest in speaking. And one of the big changes is he independently states a lot of things now.
I need to walk.
You need to walk? Make him walk. Asks for things that he wants, responds appropriately.
Hi, Daddy going.
Oh, so nice. We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Teacher has some glasses.
And now she engages with everybody. It's wonderful. She likes to play, and she's very affectionate, and she expresses that now. Her language has gotten a lot better just in the last 4 months. It's amazing.
Since starting with CARD, Amaya's made a ton of progress, and we couldn't be more grateful that she has become potty trained, started using utensils individually. She is learning how to navigate public, is holding our hands, and is just wanting to be around people more. So we're so grateful for everything that you guys have done.
Hi, Dr. Grandpa. Congratulations on your 20-year anniversary of CARD. I love all my CARD teachers. They are the best. And now I'd like to play you a Beatles song. It's called Cross the Universe.
I first saw Dr. Grandpa speak at a biomedical conference somewhere, and I was just so impressed with her. She stood up there and she talked with such confidence about recovery and what she could do for these children, and she had a whole curriculum, and I was just so impressed. But she said things like, you know, teach them, help them to develop these other skills that they have. And I thought that was so neat hearing that from her, that it would be good for them socially and help them to bridge with others. And so over the years, that's actually something my son has developed. You know, if he hadn't had speech therapy or OT over the years, he probably would be just about, you know, pretty much the same child still, not so different. But if he hadn't had CARD, I mean, he would be a completely different child. This program has unlocked the door for him to have a bright future.
Bye. Thanks for watching.
My name is Rachel Pokorski, and I have a son, Kyle Pokorski, who's 7 years old now.
Cool art by Kyle.
Around 15 months, we noticed that he had lost some speech, that he was headbanging, he had tantrums, and we were lucky. We waited and we got in with CARD, and it started working right away.
I have another exciting feature. If you put more marbles in, they alternate.
He's in a second grade class. He's at the top of his class. He reads over 100 words a minute. He's reading at 5th grade level. He loves space and astronomy, and he'll tell you, why does Venus rotate backwards? Yeah, why don't the marbles go up? Why do they go down?
Because gravity.
And he's always wanting to know more.
Why you're the one that takes the microphone?
He loves to surf.
First, I didn't want to surf. But now I love to surf.
He loves to horseback ride.
I won a trophy.
You have made a difference in his life.
CARD helped me to save.
I owe everything to you. Now, who built this?
I did.
And are you a good builder?
Yes!
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. I have been promising you all day, and it is that time. We are joined right now by Captain Gene Saunders. He is the CEO of Project Lifesaver International. Captain, are you there? I cannot see him or hear him, Matt. Have you got there? I can see him now. There we go. Captain, I can hear you now. Are you there? Wonderful to have you there. And I am so excited. Our topic for today has been managing stress, and certainly when you have a child on the autism spectrum, one of your stresses is being fearful that your child is going to elope. And your service is something that you don't just serve children on the autism spectrum, you serve anyone who is a flight risk. Tell the folks at home exactly what you guys do.
Mm.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit in terms of, for a parent who's watching, having Project Lifesaver in their community would be a great thing because, first of all, the support, the fire support staff and the police support staff are going to be trained and know when they're searching for a child the proper way to interact, because we know some of our kids are afraid of strangers. We've all taught our kids to be afraid of strangers, and we've seen and heard of circumstances where children have actually run away from rescuers. Is that right?
That's absolutely true. In fact, it's not only true with autism, but even Alzheimer's patients will do the same thing. They will tend to hide, feeling that maybe they have done something wrong or that they're going to be punished in some way. Whatever the reason, they do not assist in the search efforts in helping to find them.
Right. So you go in, and over a 2-day process, you're going to train all of the staff in terms of how to interact and how to do that. But there's also, you mentioned this radio frequency technology. Why? Because, you know, there are other things out there that offer GPS, and that's certainly something as a parent that I've heard a great deal about. But you are saying that GPS is not as effective, right?
Absolutely.
And tell us why.
Well, first off, you have to remember and give you some historical background. Radio direction finding actually came into wide use during World War II, where they were trying to find the enemy through the tracking of their radio signals.
Mm-hmm.
It evolved into much more use, and it went into wildlife tracking and is and has been used for many, many years. It is very reliable. For one, radio signals will penetrate just about anything but lead.
Okay.
So if someone's out here with a radio transmitter, as long as it's sending a signal, a receiver is capable of receiving it. As I said, only lead will block it.
Yeah.
GPS is not the same. If you've got GPS in your car, try pulling under a bank overhang or under a real thick tree or under an overpass and see what happens to your GPS signal. You'll probably get a signal such as lost satellite signal. And this is the big bugaboo with GPS. People that have it on, especially those with dementia or children with autism that don't understand the properties of it,
right,
go places where the signal will not get out and will not reach the satellites. Therefore, we are at a loss in trying to locate them through the use of those particular type signals.
Right.
Where a radio signal, regardless of where they're at, that radio signal is going to get out, and we're going to get it. And that's part of the training we give these agencies is what methods do you use to get in to acquire that signal and then start your track. It's just not a reliable device or technology, especially in this application. If you're on a boat or an airplane where there's nothing to obstruct that signal, then that's fine and that's wonderful. In fact, that's what it was designed for, those type of applications. This is not an application where it is, where I would say it should be used.
Right. Well, that certainly makes sense to me. I think we've all experienced having our phones or whatever and trying to get a signal and you can't. And I can't imagine anything worse than counting on that in a moment when every moment is precious in recovering your child. In fact, that's part of what your service does is that you cut down on the time finding a child, correct?
Absolutely. Typical searches can last hours and hours and involve up to hundreds of people. The average time that we have experienced throughout our history has been right at in a little less than 30 minutes from the time of arriving on the scene to locating the individual wearing the device.
Okay, so really, though, crucial that your child or the adult that is in question has a device. And I know we have a picture of the devices that you had sent us. I'm going to ask Matt to put that up in the next couple of seconds. How does this device function? What do we need to know about it as a parent? I imagine it's something that's pretty safe, but tell me a little bit about the device.
It is very safe. It emits a radio signal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on a preset frequency for that particular bracelet. It is battery powered. The bracelet can operate, depending on the type we have out there, from anywhere from 45 days to 60 plus days without a battery change.
Okay.
It sends a signal once per second where we can pick it up with a receiver. And as I said earlier, trained individuals can then track using that signal right to where the person is.
And we're just showing a picture of the receiver, pointing to see it, but we will find the picture of the actual bracelets. So is it something that's waterproof? Is this something that our child wears while bathing, or is it something that we put on at certain times during the day? There's the bracelet.
No, it is worn 24 hours a day. It is, I hesitate to use the word waterproof because I don't know of nothing that is absolutely waterproof.
Okay.
It is highly water resistant. You can bathe in it. You can swim in it. You can do your normal life type functions with no problem.
Okay.
And it will continue to transmit. Now, if you were to take it and beat it with a hammer, that may be another situation. But
well, that would be a
I
misuse
think
of it.
we have to be realistic
Yes,
here. In that normal wear and tear through daily, life is not going to affect it.
Right.
And it is on with a band that has to be cut off.
Okay, so the child can't get it off themselves.
The person can take on or off.
Okay, great. And I imagine there's a specific way to put it on. Do we need to have law enforcement help us put it on, or is it something that a parent can figure out for themselves?
Well, under our program, we have the law enforcement or volunteers trained.
Okay.
Will actually place the bracelet, and every 30 to 60 days, they will come out and examine it. By taking it off, they will replace the battery, make sure it's functioning properly, and they will put it back on.
Okay.
And this is one of the hallmarks of our program that, aside from being a nonprofit, that differentiates us from some others out there. Caregivers are good, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But caregivers have issues during life that may cause them to forget to do things from time to time.
Yeah.
And forgetting this battery, because it is not, it has reached its life limit and is now not working. And then a search come up and we can't find them because there's no power to the device. That's not willing that we as a program are willing to accept.
Right.
So therefore, I think one of the big reasons for the success of Project Lifesaver is that the agencies actually maintain the maintenance and the changing of the batteries rather than leaving it to the caregivers and the stresses or adding to the stresses they already have.
Okay, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think as a parent, knowing that somebody else is going to regularly show up at my house and change this, I think that gives me some peace of mind and one less thing for me to worry about. So let's talk about, from the parents' point of view, how do they go about getting this service in their community?
Well, first I would check our website and find out if it's already in their community and through what agency, either police, sheriff, or fire, or maybe a search and rescue. If it's not in your community, call us. Okay. We will give you some tips on how to get it into your community and get it started.
Okay.
And we will give you some assistance as you move forward in doing that.
Okay, wonderful. So it's not like they got to reinvent the wheel by themselves. You'll give some tips and some help, but it's something that they'll have to advocate for. It's one of those things I always hate to talk about, but I'm sure that there's a certain amount of money attached for a community to be a part of this service, and I'm sure that there is an amount of money that's attached to the actual bracelet. Do the parents, I imagine it's their responsibility to pay for the bracelet? Is that true?
That depends on the agency.
Okay.
Now, to actually start this program in a community and get the training necessary for the agency cost about $3,900. That may sound like a lot of money until you look at what one search can typically cost.
Right.
An agency, which could be up in the $9,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 range per search.
Right.
So that is the initial startup cost. The individual bracelets themselves are right about $300.
Very affordable when you're talking for
and
service.
They have a 5-year warranty, so if anything happens to them in 5 years, they're replaced. And the agencies can then decide, depending on their budget or their fundraising capabilities, if they want to charge a small monthly fee to the parents for the replacement of the battery and band, or no fee at all. We have many agencies that follow that course. There is no fee, and some that charge a reasonable fee just to keep the battery and band purchased and replaced.
Okay.
So it's up to the agency, and quite often what we see is private organizations, nonprofits and so forth, will team with these public safety organizations and help them in conducting the program and raising the money to keep it going.
Absolutely. And I also want to say for parents, if you're looking on the project Lifesaver International website, and you're seeing that it is in your community, but you need to pay for the band. That's something you can apply for a grant for from Autism Care and Treatment Today, and they are in a grant phase right now. So don't decide not to be a part of it because of that, because Autism Care and Treatment Today offers grants for those kinds of things exactly. We're going to take a little bit of a break, Captain Saunders, but when we come back, I want to talk about the kinds of rescues you've been able to do and the lives you've been able to save as a result of this service. So everybody stick with us. We're going to have more with Captain Saunders when we come back.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're talking to Captain Gene Saunders from Project Lifesaver International. Captain Saunders, I'm just wondering how this organization came to be.
During that time, I found that we were starting to increase in our search efforts for missing Alzheimer's patients. Mm-hmm. And we were not doing what I would call a tremendously good job in being able to find them, one, before something happened to them, mm-hmm. or two, even being able to find them at all before the event turned tragic. Mm-hmm. During that whole course of time, I kept saying to myself, excuse me, there's got to be a better way to do this. We're putting a lot of manpower out here, a lot of money, and we're not anywhere near as successful as I felt we should be. Mm-hmm. Well, shortly thereafter, the search and rescue function actually got changed over to the sheriff's office. But since I was a friend of the sheriff as well, he volunteered me to not only work at the police department, but to head up the search and rescue function for the sheriff's office. We still had the same situation. We were still dealing with Alzheimer's patients and the same outcomes. The sheriff happened to go to a conference back about 1997, and he brought back a pamphlet which talked about radio direction finding and tracking of wildlife. Well, on reading that, I just had the thought, you know, if we could identify those persons that would wander, provide them with one of these bracelets, and we could track them through this radio signal, we could do it a lot quicker, a lot less manpower, and most likely save lives that we ordinarily would not have done.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I called the manufacturer and we worked some things out. I then went to a local hospital and was able to convince them to give me a grant to start a pilot program. And this was just for Chesapeake. Well, when we made the announcement, there are other cities that are contiguous to Chesapeake that decided they wanted coverage as well. So we ended up covering 5 major cities until their departments came on board. And after we made the first couple of rescues, the word just kind of got out, and I started getting calls from across Virginia and across the country that they were interested in starting this program. So I was doing that as well as doing my police job, doing each about 60 to 70 hours a week. So finally, about 2001, after talking to my wife, she felt the same way I did, that maybe it was time to devote full-time effort to this particular program, because it seemed to be taking off a lot more than I can handle it on a part-time basis. So I did, and now it's grown to almost 1,300 agencies in 46 states, Canada, Australia, and getting ready to start in the UK.
Really very amazing. And you have made a number of rescues, correct?
You're right at 2,536.
That's amazing.
Without a failure, I might add.
Without a single failure. So anybody who has done this program and had a bracelet, you have had no loss of life.
No loss of life, no serious injuries. Now I will not tell you that all of them were tracked by the radio signal, but a number of them were identified because the caregiver didn't know they had gotten out, and somebody did find them, saw the wristband and knew what it was, and made the call.
Okay.
So
really,
it has,
really
affected rescues in more ways than one.
Yeah, absolutely. And statistically, when, especially for children with autism, come up missing, the odds of having 100% without loss of life, it's nothing like that without your service, is it?
No, I'm afraid to say it is not.
Yeah.
And with autistic children, the clock is absolutely working against us.
Yeah. Yeah. I well up even thinking about it. And we see almost every day there's another case, unfortunately, of a child on the spectrum who's missing. And while sometimes those cases are solved and there's a happy ending, there are enough times that there are tragic endings that as parents we lose sleep over it. And when you think about the peace of mind of knowing that your entire community has this service and that your child has this service, I think it is the answer to a lot of parents' prayers, what you're doing.
I think so, and we hear that term a lot, peace of mind.
Yeah.
So we're very proud of that.
Yeah, we've been talking all day long about managing stress, and that with autism, stress comes no matter what you do, but figuring out what you can do versus what you can't do. And this is something that you absolutely can do. So your website is projectlifesaverinternational.org, is that correct?
Just projectlifesaver.org.
Projectlifesaver.org. And they can go there and do a search to see if you're already in their community.
Yes, ma'am. And then if you're not, let us know and we'll help you get it started.
And I have already said to Captain Saunders that I looked and my community is not, and so I'm going to be talking to him about how we can make that happen in my community. Because even though my son is no longer a flight risk, there was a period of time, about a 2.5 year time when he was, and we need this service, and because I know there are other kids in my community that are a flight risk, so I'll be talking to you about that. And again, I want to reiterate that if you are someone, it's already in your community, but you're feeling like you don't have the funds for the bracelet, which by the way is very affordable, all things considered. But if you don't have those funds, I want to remind you that you can apply for a grant from Autism Care and Treatment, Act Today, act-today.org, because that's the kind of thing that they give grants for. So Captain Saunders, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing and all of those lives that you have saved. Any idea how many of those, because I know you deal with other things, dementia and Alzheimer's, about how many of those 2,500 plus were kids with autism? Do you know?
You know, I really don't, but I can tell you this: in the last 8 to 9 years, the number has increased tremendously.
Yeah.
So now when somebody asks me ratio Alzheimer's to autism, I would venture a guess that we're almost 50-50, if not a little bit more, on the autism side.
I bet you've got some really tearjerker testimonials from some parents too on your website.
Well, we've got a few. You know, we've had some interesting searches and some interesting situations that have proven to be real heart-wrenching sometimes.
Yeah. Well, again, I thank you for everything that you're doing, and I hope that anybody who needs this service, and I know there are a lot of you who are watching who really do, don't wait. You know how they say, you know, sometimes the universe sends you a pebble and then sends you a rock? Don't wait until you're wishing that you had this service. Check out their website, www.projectlifesaver.org. Go there, see if your community is on there, and if they're not, contact them about making it a part of your community. Captain Saunders, thank you so much for being with us. I hope we can have you on again sometime.
Anytime. Thank you so much for letting me be here. And if there's anything I can ever do, you know where to find me.
Well, likewise. If you ever have something new in particular, let us know, because we'd be thrilled to have you back on again.
Thank you.
Take care. We're going to take one short break, and then we're going to be back to close out the show. Stick with us.
Okay.
My name is Jennifer Yakas. I'm a CARD Senior Clinical Supervisor and a Senior Trainer.
What is a task analysis?
What is a task analysis? Very common question. A task analysis is breaking down a complex behavior chain into small components. So many of the skills that we need to teach our children are not single-step activities. It's more a multiple-step sequence of events that needs to occur in order to have a final product or a final result. So with many children, it's difficult to learn a whole sequence of events all at once. And so using a task analysis, we're able to break down that complex behavior into small individual components, teach those individual components, and then gradually link it all together.
When do I actually need a task analysis?
When you need a task analysis is when you are dealing with a sequence of events, a routine that is involving the child performing multiple actions in a certain order. An example might be brushing teeth, or getting dressed, or even reciting a sentence. So anything where there are multiple pieces of skill that need to be strung together in order to produce the desired result.
Do I need to do a task analysis, or will skills do it for me?
Some of those are already provided within skills. So we have many of the adaptive skill areas and the motor skill areas within skills that provide task analyses for your child, for the particular skills that you might need to teach. They're broken down into very minute steps. So what you might need to do as a parent or as an educator would be to look at the task analysis that is provided to you by skills and then individually tailor that task analysis for your child, depending on their specific needs. Some children might need every single step planned out for them. Some children might be able to do a more general task analysis of 3 or 4 steps. So it depends on your child and their ability to perform those skills already, as well as their ability to comprehend the actual sequence of events.
And can you give me an example of how to do a task analysis and how it will actually teach me to do a skill?
So if you were looking at brushing teeth, you might break it down into child picks up his toothbrush, he grabs the toothpaste, opens the toothpaste, puts toothpaste on the toothbrush, brushes the different areas of his teeth, spits out the toothpaste, rinses, and then dries his mouth. So that would be an example of a task analysis. So how a task analysis might help you teach a skill is that it is probably going to be easier for your child to focus on one particular piece of that skill and learn that to mastery, which allows them to access praise and reinforcement early on. It's going to be a much more successful positive learning experience because it also allows you to hone in on that specific skill, teach it appropriately, fade out your prompts, get the child to do it independently. It's just more manageable for both you and the child.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We just had a wonderful interview with Captain Gene Saunders from Project Lifesaver. I just love it when things make sense. And what a wonderful, I'm aware of the fact that there are other kinds of bracelets that are out there that rely on GPS. But I just think, how much sense does this make that it's not just you getting a bracelet, it's your community's support staff getting training in how to track your child with the bracelet. I just think it's an amazing, amazing thing. And I don't know about you, but I was just talking to Captain Saunders about how I'm going to make this a reality in my community. And very affordable, all things considered. I mean, I know, money is money and there's, it never seems like there's enough of it, but very affordable when you think about the peace of mind that comes with this. It's very inspiring to me. Really enjoyed having the opportunity to talk to Captain Saunders about this important topic. All week long, we are going to be talking about managing stress, and sometimes that means having to, name it. We talked about this with our kids, that sometimes being able to say, I'm scared, or I'm frustrated, or I'm overwhelmed. I just had to send an email to somebody saying, I'm sorry, I'm behind on this, I'm overwhelmed. Sometimes just saying that, then you can move on to other things, right? And being able to put your child's safety into a much more manageable spot, I think is one of those things that we could all breathe a big sigh and get better sleep at night, don't you think? So really encourage you to check out their website, see if it's already in your community. And in any case, we've got a lot more that we're going to be talking about this week. We are going to be doing live shows Monday through Thursday this week. Starting on Friday, I'm going to be gone all of next week because, as we all know, I got to take some time to be with my child because it's summer. And and it's my 10th anniversary this weekend, so we have some adventures in store. But we will be replaying episodes, and really the rest of this week, we've got some really wonderful things coming up for you. Tomorrow, we're going to have Vince Redmond back. He is a wonderful marriage and family counselor who he's got a wonderful history of working with kids with autism using ABA. So he's going to be with us tomorrow during the 11 o'clock hour. On Wednesday, we've got some great things coming up on Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I don't know if I'm allowed to say yet, but we have a wonderful guest who's going to be with us on Wednesday. I guess you're going to have to tune back in. And on Thursday, we have a wonderful author who's going to be with us. They're telling us I got to wrap up here. So I want to remind you, lots of different ways that you can be in touch with us. Even as this conversation ends, you can, this show ends, you can continue other ways. I'm going to have Matt start to flash some of those on the screen so that you can contact us, tell us your thoughts, your concerns, the things you want to know more about, the questions you want answered. There you can phone in, you can Facebook with us, you can tweet with us. We like all of those different things. And don't forget, there are multiple ways to watch us. If you're missing us while we're not doing live shows, you can go back and catch up on some old shows. You can be watching us on Blip TV. You can be watching us on YouTube, on our own channel there. You can be watching us on iTunes. And of course, you can always catch us on Ustream. So there are all these different ways in which you can watch us. We're here to serve you. So we hope that you'll find us in all the different ways that you can and that you'll let us know if we're getting it done for you. Because if we're not, I want to change how we're doing it. So let us know what works. Let us know what doesn't work. If you've written in and you're waiting for a response, it's coming. I am behind. I'm very behind this week. I don't know what that's about. But in any case, I thank you so much for being on this journey with me. And I hope that we're finding some way to be helpful to you on this journey. This is a sacred journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Find ways to manage the stress for you. And if you've got a great way, write in and tell us. We're going to be talking about it all week long because we know it's a part of it. We didn't get a chance to get to our funding tip today, so we'll get a chance to do that tomorrow. And as I mentioned, Vince Redmond tomorrow. So really exciting show for you. You're not going to want to miss that. And don't forget, on Wednesday, we'll have Evelyn Gould and Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. On On Thursday, we're going to have Richard Tripp with us. He is the author of the book. It's really making, huge impact right now. Mommy, I wish I could tell you what they did to me. I think I actually have it in my bag. You know what? We don't have time for that. I'll show it to you tomorrow. In any case, thank you for being with us. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.